I'll call the June 20th, 2011 Brattleboro Development Review Board meeting to order. And a few introductory comments. I'll note that this is the last meeting of this fiscal year for the town and the appointment year for the Brattleboro Development Review Board. Although some of us have reapplied for positions on the board, as of this moment, the select board has not made any reappointments. They plan to do so tomorrow. So I think the folks whose terms are ending today are Dr. Char and my term, and Timberly's term as an alternate, James's term as an alternate, and is that it?
Gina's
and Gina is leaving the board. So and Joe, yeah, thank you for reminding me. And Joe Bushy's is actually terming out. The Brattleboro Development Review Board is subject to the Brattleboro charter. Thank you. And as part of the Brattleboro charter, no one is allowed to serve on the same board for more than 9 consecutive years. And Mr. Bushy has that incredible honor and distinction. He has served on the Brattleboro Development Review Board for 9 years. If he were here today, I would thank him and congratulate him, but I'll do so in his absence. He has stated that he plans to take a 1-year hiatus and then come back next year for 9 more consecutive years. Very happy that he's going to do that. So I understand that some others might be leaving us as well. Kimberly, maybe switching teams and going over to the Planning Commission, I hear.
Oh, maybe. We'll see.
We all make mistakes, and you're welcome back at any time. And I hope to see others as well when the select board makes its reappointments. I think we are going to be short of folks. Do you know if we have enough people to fill our roster for the 7 members and 3 alternates?
No, we don't.
We don't have enough.
No.
So I would make a plea to the folks who are here in the audience today, or the public, I should say, members of the public, and those members of the public at home who would like to serve on the Brattleboro Development Review Board. We have some positions open, and we'd be happy for the extra manpower. We are the Brattleboro Development Review Board. We hear applications for land development in the town of Brattleboro. We have 5 or 6 matters before the board tonight, including some site plan, conditional use, and concept review and the like. We conduct our hearings on the record, which is not typical, but we are one of a dozen or so communities in the state of Vermont that does so. What that means is that we very carefully take in the evidence of applicants and members of the public and other persons who help us make an informed decision, and we do so by recording the proceedings. I have a tape recorder here that has a recording of the proceedings. We also videotape the proceedings as well, and we take in evidence and we act somewhat like a court. In doing so, we need to follow a little more procedure and be a little more careful than some of our brethren. So what we'll do is ask that when the applicants come up, if they could identify themselves, when members of the public wish to address the board, that they also identify themselves. And we'll have just one person speaking at a time, so we know we can easily determine who is providing the evidence before the board. We do this because we'd like our decision here at the local level, at the town level, to be given some deference by the environmental court. So in conducting our hearings on the record, the environmental court doesn't conduct, if there's an appeal of our decision, and occasionally there is, the environmental court doesn't conduct a whole new trial. The environmental court just reviews the record that we've created and determine if we've made the right decision. Looks like we'll have some members of the public participating tonight, which is great. We encourage that here at the DRB. It does require that we make sure that, well, let me explain the process. That's probably a better way to go about it. I'll call up an applicant. The applicant will describe the project. Members of the board will ask the applicant questions until we've had all of our issues answered and responded to. And then we'll open up the discussion to members of the public. We ask that the members of the public address the board. If you have information for the board, please provide it for us. If you have questions, ultimately for the applicant, we ask that you provide them to the board first. We'll tally them up. We'll make sure we remove any of the redundancies, and then we'll query the applicant and make sure we get your questions answered. A couple of points of note. We don't have a time limit, so we're not going to cut you off at 3 minutes. In fact, we're not going to cut you off at all, but we do ask that you take as much time as you need, but not any more. Make sure your fellow members of the public have opportunity to speak. And we also don't conduct an analysis of whether you're an interested person under the statute. There's a statutory provision that says only certain people in the town get to participate in a DRB hearing. You have to be an interested person under the statute. We don't make that inquiry. We let anyone from the town of Brattleboro participate, but be forewarned that just because we allow you to participate at this level, the environmental court may in fact follow the statutory definition for interested person and not allow participation at the next level if there is for any of the matters before the board tonight. One housekeeping matter before we begin. Oh, two housekeeping matters. First, the chair will fall on his sword and apologize to the other members of the board for not circulating a draft opinion for the previous meeting yet. That will be out shortly. Mr. Cuthbertson has reminded me of when that needs to be done, and it will be done far before the deadline. But I apologize for not getting that out sooner. And two, we do have minutes from that meeting, the May 16, 2011 meeting. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the May 16, 2011 meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any discussion or comments? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That carries 7-0. And then I guess one last housekeeping matter. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 members here tonight. I'm going to recuse myself on 3 matters: 2011-052, 2011-068, and 2011-071. My law firm does occasional work for parties interested in those matters. And as I understand it, matter 2011-066 there's been a request for a continuance.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I will appoint all of the other. Well, I apologize. I'm a little rusty today. We should first have a disclosure of conflicts of interest and ex parte communication. I've just made mine. Anyone else have a disclosure?
Yeah, I will recuse myself from 2011-72.
Okay. And I can sit on that one, so I will sit, and all other alternates will sit on 2011-072, and that will result in 7 voting members. Any other alternates? Any other disclosures? And so all other alternates are appointed for 052, 068, and 071, which just leaves 2011-069, and we go by alphabetical order. So Timberly, you are appointed for 2011-069. Okay. With that, the other quirk of conducting a proceeding on the record is that we take all of our testimony under oath. The applicants are under oath, the members of the public are under oath. So if you do if there's any chance you're going to participate tonight, I'd ask that you stand and take the following oath. All right. Do you hereby affirm that the evidence You shall give the cause under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury.
I do.
Thank you. Brian, have the matters on the agenda tonight been properly warned?
Yes, I have.
And with that, I will step aside until 2011-069.
Thank you. With that, we're going to open the public hearings and I'll call application 2011-052 Rick Fleming for Eagle Night. Please come up and tell us about the project.
Thank you. I'm here representing Eagle Realty. We own the Shell station on Canal Street. We were approached by Greyhound Bus when the bus stop on Putney Road closed back about a month and a half ago as to whether we would be open to the idea of moving the bus stop to our gas station. And went to our planning office, and they said that we needed to get this board's approval in order to do that. In the interim, they did allow us to open the bus stop last week with the understanding that if this board doesn't approve the request, that we would obviously close it. It's pretty straightforward. A couple times a day, between 10 and noon, there'll be a Greyhound bus, one going north that will stop, and one going south that will stop at our facility on Canal Street. I believe you all have a map or a plot plan. As you look at that, Greyhound sent a bus up back, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks ago from Boston. Got off the interstate, came up to our facility. As you can see, it's on the north side of the property where they would pull in off of Canal Street, stop there for approximately 3 to 5 minutes, load passengers, unload passengers, and then get back on the interstate and head north or south. As far as tickets, we are selling tickets inside the store. It basically is a program that we loaded into our existing computer with a printer. It's pretty straightforward.
How many buses per day come in and out?
Right now, I believe there's 2. In the summer months, he said that might expand to 3 or 4. But it is a commercial piece of property. We have tractor trailers that do pull into the lot, primarily in the morning.
And this is, it operates in what we would consider to be normal business hours or gas station hours?
Yes.
It's not coming in at midnight or
No.
2 in the morning or?
No. No.
Okay. Where do, you're selling tickets inside the
Convenience store.
convenience store.
Yep.
Where do people wait when they're waiting for a bus?
Based on what happened up at the other store, they said there might be between 3 and 5 people a day getting on the bus, so they can wait right in the store.
Okay. And the bus will come down Canal Street from the interstate, turn in on your northern exit, and here you show it parking at the gas pumps.
Right under the canopy that's right there.
Is there, what happens if there's vehicles fueling at the gas pumps?
They pull to the left and stop over in here. I mean, the lot is plenty big enough for a vehicle of that size.
And then it will circulate around and back out, around the back of the lot and off back to the highway.
Yes.
And the purpose of having it under the canopy is just for weather? Are there canopies on your back pumps? Are there
No.
the diesel?
No.
So in the event of there being people fueling at the gas pumps, then it would pull further around?
There's
or-
plenty of room to the right where they can pull around and pull out into the back of the lot.
Could we formalise it? One of the questions that's been raised by, I'm not exactly sure who raised it, whether it was the planning department or whether it was the fire chief, can we formalise a place where the bus parks every time, rather than have a if not here, then there, or?
Well, it'd be nice to formalize it, but I mean, there could be a car there when they pull in.
True.
I wouldn't want to block it off all day just for the 2 times a day that the bus is going to be there. Doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, but.
Did you see the comments that Sue Fillion made about that? It says, as indicated on the site plan, the bus loading area will be alongside one of the gas pump islands. The department heads do not support the proposed location under the northern canopy because park bus in that location could restrict cars from entering the site to the eastern entrance and cause backups on Canal Street, and the location assumes that no cars will be utilizing those pumps when it arrives. Would you care to comment on that?
Well, between 10 and 11:30 is probably the slowest time of the day up there, as far as customers coming onto the lot. I mean, if you would like me to move the spot to someplace else on the plot plan, I would be more than willing to do that.
Which one's the eastern entrance? That's the
Well, it's north-south. It's not east-west. So it's the north entrance is
Okay,
up here where the pizza place,
Next to Millennium.
Millennium Pizza.
And the concern there, Dr. Chard, was that if the bus was parked there, then people wouldn't be able to pull in.
And they go on to suggest alternative locations for the bus. Would be the rear of the property, either the eastern or western edge of the property, which would require relocating parking spaces, or in front of the building parallel to Canal Street.
Well, it can't go in front because of the turning radius. To get in front of the store would be too tight for the bus. I mean, we could put it to the back of the lot, certainly.
The shaded area that's here on the, is that the one that Sue was referring to?
Yes. It's shown under the canopy adjacent to 2 fuel pumps.
If a bus is parked in that space, there's plenty of room for vehicles to come in, go around the bus, come to the other islands over here, or to use the 2 islands that are on this side of the canopy as well.
Other than having it under the canopy, what's the benefit of having it there? Post access to
Where
the...
Greyhound thought it would make the best sense to park.
Yes.
I wanted to comment on that. I saw Sue Fillion's assessment, and I frankly find it hard to follow. I know the gas station very well. I'm pretty familiar for all these years with the general traffic up there, the use of the areas, the gas station, and to imagine that in 3 to 5 minutes in any given morning, as large as that area is, as many pumps as they have, that so many cars would pile up that they would actually tie up into the Canal Street is not worthy of discussion.
I wished I had that problem.
What, are you ever likely to have 2 buses here at any one time? Potentially? Unless one breaks down.
Well, if one were to break down,
You'd move it to the back.
of the lot.
Yeah.
Really get somebody there to take care of it.
And internal circulation on the lot, is, if you've got tractor trailers going through there, for diesel, is clearly adequate. Anybody else on the board have any questions? Anybody member of the public like to comment on this application?
May I unfinished vote?
No. I don't think so. Feel free to ask a question if you have one.
No. I do. It's good. Just it's less and less common these days, but people riding a bus do like to jump off the bus at a site, even if they only have 3 to 5 minutes, and smoke half a cigarette. Now, obviously, they can't smoke around the pumps.
That's true.
Is there anywhere on that site that they can? Otherwise, the bus...
We could put a smoking stand over on the side, on the opposite side of the bus, closest to the pizza place with a smoker's stand.
With the where the parking spaces are.
Yeah.
That's a good comment. Catherine.
I was just curious if that didn't work and you said you could move it to the back, where were you talking about on the plan? If this were not,
Well, there's plenty of room between the car wash and the diesel island for the bus to pull in and stop over in the general, somewhere in the back
so it
area.
would come in this way and come around the pumps anyway.
That's what they do.
Okay, just curious.
Okay, with any other questions from the board?
I have a question for Brian, and that's the future. Is there something about buses stopping down at the railroad station when that gets upgraded? I see that in the paper somewhere.
It's been designed for that, but I think the Texas and it's difficult for the bus companies.
Well, they had two issues with the transportation center. One was it's a difficult turn coming off of Main Street, taking a left on the flat with the size of the bus. And two, there wasn't a spot down there to sell tickets. It was they don't have someone in a bus terminal selling tickets. So we're doing it with our existing cashiers.
I think with the additional condition of providing a marked area for people to partake of tobacco, smoke, somewhere away from the pump, so it's clear that there's a specific area where someone can go and do that. I'm looking for a motion to approve. Let me get the application 2011-052, the Fleming Freeman Night Races.
So moved.
Second? All those in favour? Yep. Thank you very much. Passes 6-0-0. Is that right? 0-1. 6-0-1. Sorry. Thank you very much, Rick.
Thank you.
If you could send Craig Miskovich back in, wherever Craig is. Or is it me?
No, yeah, I think
Oh, it's me. Okay, sorry. Cool, application 2011-068, Natalie Blake and Randy Song for Fulton Arts. Please come up. Hi there. Tell us about your project.
All right. This is the, currently known as Sinel Auto Parts building on Plaza Street. And we are under purchase and sale to buy and renovate the building to create what might be called an arts destination. Randy, I should introduce us, sorry. Natalie Blake, local ceramic artist. I have a studio at the Cotton Mill.
Randy Solway Glass, also a studio at the Cotton Mill. Together we are Fulcrum Arts.
So we've been working for a long time on this idea of having an arts destination. We, for many years, worked on the Tri-State Diesel building that's sort of around the corner, which we know is now deemed a toxic site. And so we pulled out of that project. Oh, we have a picture. That's so great. I was thinking we didn't bring a picture. And this building recently was presented to us, and we don't propose really many external changes at all. We know that your concerns would be signage, lighting, landscaping. What else? Parking. So the
Circulation, that kind of thing.
right. The parking. The building comes with the lot to the right of it. If you're standing facing the building, that lot that we all know about because we get to park there for free for hours. Actually comes with the building, and that will be used for ourselves and our tenants, and maybe some customers, clients, people coming to visit. But it won't be a big inflow and outflow. We do propose having a retail space in the front, but we pretty much feel like all those parking places will be reserved for ourselves and our employees and our tenants. So anyone coming into the retail gallery will be parking in the parking garage or the lot across from us. Signage, we know the restrictions. I did learn from Craig actually the restrictions on how to do a sign, but we love that sign that's there, that sticks out. It's an old metal, classic signboard, I guess you'd call it. And we hope to just change that out to put Fulcrum Arts on the front. The red and orange stripes, we haven't really talked about, but we might take them off. Yeah.
So, what are your hours of operation? I mean, you're going to be open to the public on a daily basis?
Yep.
So, you're 10 till 6 or something like that?
Yeah.
10 till 9?
Definitely haven't gotten that far. We probably will have some evening hours and we'll have some weekend workshops.
But you'll have, there's potentially a retail space there?
Yep.
There will definitely be a retail space.
And then the rest of the building, assuming that the retail space is first floor with windows looking to the street,
Right.
may not be, of course. The rest of the building will be utilized how? As studios or?
Studio space, and it could be rented to folks who have office space. There's many different types of people that we can have in the building. So it could be, we are considered light manufacturing, and that's our proposed changes to light industry.
Yep.
So we might find other potters or glass blowers or woodworkers who have light lines who want to be in the building, or we might find people that want office space.
But you,
It's really a lot going to resemble the cotton mill space
but
now.
you think of it in terms of studios, artists, creative people, rather than residential.
No
You're
residential.
not putting apartments in the top 2 floors
No.
or.
Too costly.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to have glass blowing on the first level for the public, my studio, and the gallery. Natalie Blake will be on the second floor with her ceramic studio, also accessible to the public. And the third and fourth floor, they're each 3,200 square feet, will be rental space, preferably one tenant a floor.
Okay. Brian, you ready to have?
They're going to maintain that projecting sign, they need a dimensional waiver.
Because the sign's too big?
I think so.
Okay. From the standpoint of the we can come back to that. The outside of the building with the windows, everything that's blocked off, are you keeping it blocked off? Are you going to open it up?
We're going to
or-
open those up. The windows
Open
are
it all
actually
up.
there.
Yep.
They just have a layer of tin over them. So we'll take the tin off and restore some of the windows that are broken.
The one in the corner might stay blocked right there under the sign on the first floor.
Yep.
Right, that was the old entrance, or was an old entrance. That one was blocked off. And we will have, we propose, and we haven't finalized this yet, but we'd like to enter people from the door on the street there, walk through the gallery space, view Randy blowing glass, and then come out the side door, which is in the parking space. And that's where we would like to do an ADA ramp, an
Okay.
accessible ramp, in our own parking lot there.
How does that, do you know yet how that impacts parking? The ramp, putting a ramp in there? Is the ramp on the rear of the building or the side of the building?
It would come on the side of the building.
It's right, it would be right where that little car is. There's actually a door that's been metaled over. There's 2 or 3 windows and then like an old door like this kind of door. We would open that
Right.
door. It's already existing.
You think it this is your parking?
No, I thought
I'd like
that,
to see that.
are you,
Horse and
are
buggy
you
only.
working with the Arts Commission on the bike?
That's not a part of our project.
No,
But
we're gonna-
you were, okay.
We've never seen that before.
They never have. Wow. that's
Although it's
so
a
weird.
great idea.
I would like
The,
to, I was wondering if the co-op was gonna do something like that, and we would try to join forces with
I think they might be.
whoever they're hired to do something similar.
Can you talk about the parking spaces? How many parking spaces do we actually have there?
Well,
12 spaces?
Just 12? Okay.
Are they delineated?
they are
Will
not-
they be delineated?
Yes, they will. be.
Can we have them delineated? Can we have handicap parking spaces to go with the handicap ramp?
That would make sense. yes.
Appropriately placed so that the ramp is not too far from the parking space?
Right. Like, probably, well, we're not sure if the ramp's gonna come forward or backward, around where that little car is now.
Do you-
I think a good parking.
My recollection of that free parking is it's pretty wide and open. Can we narrow it down so that the turn in, turn out is not 175 feet wide or whatever it is? Are you with me?
Yeah.
I bring it in to be what we would consider to be a traditional curb cut, which is a 15 to 18 foot entrance rather than just broadly anybody pulls in anywhere they like.
Right.
So that we try and create, with delineated parking spaces, we create some routine and some regularity, and you pull in here and left, right, whatever.
You go in this way, you go out that way. That's what you're
However that, no.
That's what you're saying, instead of there being kind of two columns, you would come in and,
There would be a planter or something, something to say, you know, an arrow being painted or somehow signage, small signage says enter or exit, maybe.
We're looking to improve the site and improve the
Or peas.
regularity or consistency in parking in terms of delineating space and then having people pull in a certain way and
So it's
pull
not
out
a
and stuff.
free-for-all.
So it's not a free for all.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
Yeah, right. There's no reason why we couldn't do that. We just
well,
didn't.
I guess I would only be concerned about losing some spaces to do that.
I don't think you'll lose any space.
Probably gains.
Okay. And if we had to, we'll lose the spaces, but that would just be my only concern. But you think by delineating them out, we would gain, yeah.
How wide is that site?
Not sure.
I do, but I don't have a real drawing. We have
65 feet?
Oh, there you go. 65 in the front, 55 in the back.
with Emerson has a right of way to keep their loading area.
So
clear.
they will be moving trucks in and out and through there too.
Yeah, that has to stay the way it is
Okay.
today, but in the back.
So that's a consideration too when it comes to marking parking spaces and determining how people drive in and out
Yeah.
the lot. Is there a basement in that building?
There is,
Is it used or utilised?
they use it for storage right now. I'm sorry? There's a vertical reciprocating
Conveyor.
Not to be confused with an elevator,
No.
I've learned.
It's a VRC.
Which goes up 2 floors. And we are investigating whether we can make that go up 4 floors or if we can find the funds to do a passenger elevator, which would be ideal.
Handicapped accessible passenger elevator.
I have one second. I have a question for the zoning. This is not in the floodplain, right?
No, the floodplain comes up to the edge of the sidewalk.
That's sort of Your basement though is below that. What are you doing about energy, fuel? I mean, for the glass plane, you have propane or
Yes.
where are the propane tanks being sited?
They, at this point, are going to be sited in the back right corner.
Has
They will be buried underground, just like they are at the cotton mill. They need to be 10 feet from any building.
Yep.
And they need to be 60 inches below the ground,
Yep.
buried in sand, cement, there's all these restrictions. Then a 24-inch dug groove that will feed under everything from the tanks to the building. It's exactly what I did at the cotton mill. I've been at the cotton mill for 11 years.
Brian, are the propane tanks, if they're buried under the ground in the floodplain,
No.
That's a good answer.
Yeah, they'd probably be below the base flood elevation, but they're not subject to floodplain regulation.
One of the comments, again, from Sue Fillion, is that there's a 10-foot right-of-way behind the building. In addition, there is a loading dock associated with Emerson's building in between the building and the parking lot. These right-of-ways provide important access for the fire department to the rear of the buildings in front on Elliott Street. The applicant should be advised that these rights-of-way must be kept clear. In addition, the fire department has expressed an interest in having the applicants meet with them to review the parking lot, regardless of whether or not the DRB requires it to be reconfigured.
Good, our plan was to keep that open for Emerson's anyway. So, but it's good to know that's added on there.
And the bags being where in-site photography is versus our loading dock.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all, nothing is gonna change. We have to meet.
I think what we're going to ask you to do is to meet with the fire department and have the fire department
Approve our apartment.
approve it to their satisfaction.
Yep.
I think also that the fire department should be involved in how these propane tanks are
Yeah.
settled into the ground.
And we met with them before.
Yeah, it's a formality, and you just got to go through it and do it to their satisfaction, which is I'm sure you would.
They're very familiar with us already. Yeah, we'll do that.
According to my notes here, it says it's 43, 45, and 43 through 47 Flat Street. Does that include that fenced-in area that used to be Hometown Motors?
No,
It's from the end of that gate up,
right.
all the way through the, okay.
Please, yes.
You mentioned that your proposal would enliven the pedestrian. How did you plan to do that?
Enliven the pedestrian
Yeah, what did you have in mind?
traffic. Jelly beans?
Jelly beans?
Oh.
Oh, I do have one more question. What about that owl?
That owl?
The owl.
There's an owl on the roof on the rear of the building.
There is?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
In
It's
the,
A very famous owl.
I think we should protect it.
Well,
Is it a spotted owl?
Definitely.
they couldn't remove the Citgo sign. I don't know why that owl should have to go.
It's probably a cross-eyed owl of some sort. It's to keep the birds off the roof, I presume. One of those types of
Reasonable.
We'll be sure to preserve it. We are preservationists.
And in terms of the pedestrian traffic, it's because glass blowing is so exciting.
More exciting than auto parts, right?
Much
You'll be
more
down there,
exciting.
won't you?
If anybody has come to see our open studio once a year, you'll know what I'm talking about.
Let's talk about landscape. Would like to talk about landscaping, lighting, and signage again. In any order you like. It would be nice if we could get some greenery down there. However, where?
Potted plants?
Yep. Raised bed, potted plants.
We're both avid gardeners, so we'll probably can't help ourselves. We'll probably want to.
Suggestion
Put some
from
windows.
Ms. Fillion was that you use it to delineate the entrance where the cars would pull in. And also they're interested in perhaps having some bicycle parking there.
Now, what is protocol on that? We certainly can't do that right on the sidewalk, right? Because the sidewalk has to be left free and clear so many feet, I imagine.
It would have to be on the side of the building.
In the parking
somewhere.
space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, isn't there bicycle parking at the transportation center?
Yeah.
Between our building and the hospital side? Oh, right in front, that's
Yeah,
right.
right in
Hold on,
front.
she's like right in front.
And then the side by experience group.
Never had the guts to ride a bicycle.
What
I
about
mean,
lighting?
We're gonna be riding our bikes,
So you want somewhere to chain them up? Or
Right.
park them up? Or-
but we might just park them over there, or we might just make some spaces. Well, we could think that into.
You could think
when
it
we
through.
plan out the parking lot, for sure. Certainly wanna promote that. Lighting,
We
What was
know
the-
all exterior lighting shall be dark sky compliant.
face down.
We will contact Efficiency Vermont and get some of their fixtures, maybe like Cultural Intrigue Building, and
Yep.
scoop them in.
We don't have a plan for our lighting yet. We don't have like architectural drawings rendered, but we know that we've gotta make them compliant. And probably we'll do fairly minimal lights to begin with, which would
So-
just be
So we will ask,
signage.
part of your decision will be that the lighting plan is, and the landscaping plan is approved administratively by Brian, which means you've got to come back to the department and say, here's what we're doing with parking, here's what we're doing with lighting, and here's what we're going to do with signage. So talk about signage one more time. Brian's just advised us that the swinging metal sign is too big for current code. That may be a shame. Or we could give you, it's
We know-
possible that we could give you a waiver to
Yeah.
continue to use it if it's of historic significance. I don't know. I
We
mean,
are-
I can't recall seeing the sign.
It's that corner one. We would love
Sitting right
to
up.
ask for a waiver because we really would like to keep it.
We're
Do
gonna
we-
be pursuing historic tax credits, so it's a nice thing.
Do we know the size of the sign, Brian?
No,
No?
maybe 12 square feet.
The building,
15.
not including the basement, is 13,300.
Do green roofs count as square footage, being able to access a roof for signage or allowable square footage?
It's just up by the front of
Frontage.
the building front.
It's by the frontage, yeah. And what's the front, 65 is it? 65 feet? What does that give us in square footage for wall signs, Brian? Do you know?
Well, I think it maxes out at 120
Maxes out.
out or something like that.
So it's twice the frontage, is
Yeah.
it? So it's 90.
Well, all those
Was the
other
board-
signs that are up front, those are gonna go away.
Which
The
signs?
signs that are above the windows and everything, are those gonna be gone, or are you gonna use those to advertise?
Yeah, not sure yet, we haven't.
It would be nice if we could just keep them and make them applicable to our fulcrum
Right.
arts.
But those are okay, right, Brian?
Yes.
The ones that are flat against the building.
Yeah.
The one in question is the one that hangs
Right.
off. You were saying you thought it was 12 feet?
I don't know what it is. The limit is 9 square feet, and it's
What's
larger than that.
12
The
feet?
sign that hangs off?
Does anybody on the board have an opinion about trading off wall sign versus hanging sign? Just if the hanging sign is 3 feet or 4 feet or 5 feet over, then they reduce the wall sign by that amount.
I think it adds to the character of the building myself.
Yeah. Okay.
It seems like it's a historic piece, but I don't know, maybe it doesn't
Wait.
get weighed,
There's not a lot of historic stuff that goes on in this book.
yeah.
Actually, it's ancient. It is ancient, but there's a historic wall sign, a wall painting on the far side that still
I
says.
think the sign's about this big, the one that hangs out into the street.
Yeah, it's about 3 feet at the most.
Right. Something like that.
Any other questions from any other members of the board? Anybody in the public like to comment on this application? Stone silence.
They're like, good luck.
Well, I'm speak personally for a moment. I think it's a fantastic opportunity for you. I think it's great for that building, that location. I would encourage you to, as much as possible, keep the building aesthetic as it was, originally designed. And feel free to go wild. Sorry, Brian. Sorry. No. This is the jelly bean thing. Bringing people into the area and increasing the vibrancy of the local task. With the caveats that we just talked about, which would be parking, lighting, signage, landscaping, ADA, fire department approval, and you have to talk to Public Works for a reallocation of water and sewer, because you're going to be using water and sewer that's different from the existing structure, so they have to come visit you and decide whether your water needs are enough and whether your sewer is enough and so on. Well, I'm sure it'll not be a problem, but that will have to occur too. So we'll put all that into this decision. So I'm looking for a motion to approve application 2011-068 for Primarks.
Second.
Moving and seconded. All those in favour? All those against? Thank you very much. Good luck.
Thank you.
601. Ryan. Call Mr. Miskovich. Thank you.
Before I call application 2011-069, I want to make a couple remarks. First, there's been a couple of references to memos from Sue Fillion. I just want to explain what that means, and there's a memo from Sue Fillion regarding the next application as well. Sue is a planner in the Planning Services Department in the town of Brattleboro. And the town of Brattleboro Planning Services Department reviews the applications that have been submitted for review by the DRB and makes comments to us. It's a little weird, so let me explain why and what that relationship is. We're not an instrument of the town of Brattleboro. We don't do what the Planning Services Department wants us to do. We don't do what the Select Board wants us to do. We're an independent board. But the town of, and I know this because the town of Brattleboro has in the past been an applicant before the DRB, and in some ways is participating in the next application as well. But we do appreciate the input that the Planning Services Department provides. There are many professionals in that department who provide very thoughtful and helpful comments, and we always consider them and often incorporate them. And I think there's been some incorporation of those matters tonight. It's important to make that note because we have a fairly complicated application coming up next. And I just want to make sure that everyone understands that the Brattleboro Development Review Board is not an appeal. We don't hear appeals from the decisions of the Select Board. If the Select Board has made a decision that you don't like, we can't change that. Nor can we change the decision of the town school district. We don't sit and hear appeals of that board either. There is a process to follow if you're aggrieved by those decisions. We have a rather narrow mandate, and that is to hear applications for land development in the town of Brattleboro for a specific site. So our next application is exactly that. And I hope we have a lot of participation from the public regarding this application. But to the extent that you are upset that the town select board or the school district have taken an action that you find is inappropriate, we can't change that decision. We don't sit and we don't hear appeals of their decisions. With that, I'll call application 2011-069. Hello.
Hi.
You can introduce yourselves and please tell us about your project.
I am Adam Hubbard, a member of BASIC. The Brattleboro Area State Park is coming tonight.
My name is David Longsmith. I'm the president of BASIC.
taking care of the lot, Recreation and Parks Department.
So, thanks for having us. I'll tell you a little bit about where we're at in this process. There has been, well, first I'd just like to make a comment about skateboarding. My attraction to this project comes from this appeal of skateboarding. Even though I'm a beginner at best, I really appreciate it as a unique sport in that it's very physically and athletically demanding, but it's also a very creative sport, unlike any other, and it's cheap. It's very accessible to the public. It's also got a very passionate following, and a group of skaters that have been in this town have been at this for a long time. I came to it about 18 months ago when this site was proposed, and I particularly like this site, but there has been efforts ongoing in the town of Brattleboro for about 20 years to get a spot to skate. There has been suggestions at Memorial Park. There's been suggestions at Union Station. There was even a proposal for the West River fields. And all of those met with some sort of obstacle that resulted in us at this point in time. And the Kroll lot is, in many ways, the ideal spot for a skate park. It's level, it's accessible, it's close to town, it's relatively isolated from residential development, though there are some residents close to it. It's located on a public bus line. It's got adequate size. There's on-street parking along Western Avenue. There's on-street parking on High Street. There's parking on Cedar Street. So there is a lot to be said for the qualities of the Kroll lot. There are also concerns about the Kroll lot, and we understand those as well. So let me just give you a little bit of orientation here. This is the Kroll lot in the center here. The biggest lot is a 5-acre lot. And this is the intersection of Green Street and High Street and the beginning of Western Avenue, with Union Hill forming the western boundary there. Let me go right to the site plan here. We have this process this is school district property, so we have been negotiating with the school district for maybe a year out of the last 18 months to come up with this location and to determine a lease. The school board has reviewed this incrementally as we moved along, and we've established a lease boundary that runs along this row of mature trees here. And we would occupy the space west of that row of trees and east of the top of the bank that goes down to Union Hill. The proposal is for 10,000 square feet, 10 to 12,000 square feet, and that's what you see here. You see 10,000 square feet with maybe hopefully 2,000 square feet of bowls at the end here. The idea here is to present a park that accommodates a variety of users from beginner to intermediate to expert. And one of the things that we love about the Kroll lot is that it's a mixed use park. One of the prime criteria for a successful skate park is that it's not off in the corner of town. It's not some industrial spot. It's in a spot where there's lots of activity, lots of action, and lots of people. We appreciate, and I appreciate, my kids have played on these playgrounds here, and I think those playgrounds are more active now than they've ever been since I've been in town. And I appreciate the need for that use in town. Part of our agreement with the town is to relocate or actually purchase a new play structure to replace the existing one. The existing one sits back in this corner here. And there's enough room between the basketball court and the backstop to build a new play structure. We'd also like to see the swings go there, and if necessary, there's room out in the field to move the backstop over a little bit if foul balls are a concern, or if we want a little more space from the basketball court. This play field is not a formal baseball field. It's not a little league field. It's not it doesn't have bases in the ground and foul lines. So it's really like a kickball field and a play field for the school. So there's ample room up here, and we like the idea, or I like the idea of this area being a little bit more protected from Western Avenue and a little sunnier with the shade from that row of trees here. Our proposal calls for no change in the trees. All the trees that are there remain, although many of them are coming of age. In fact, a couple of them have come down recently. There's a lot of concern about skate parks, and we understand that. There's also a lot of myths about skate parks, and we'd like to sort of clarify some of those. The skating that you hear on the city streets, I'll add that skating is illegal on most town streets. There's an ordinance against skating in town. Thus, the increased desire for the skaters to have a place. But the skating that you hear on city streets is not the same type of noise that you would hear in a concrete park. What we're proposing is a concrete park that's smooth, not sidewalk or asphalt, which creates a much louder experience for skaters. That said, skating can be loud. There is the bang of a skateboard when you hit a jump or you ollie and your board goes flying. We have numerous references that cite skating, the action of skating and grinding as producing about 50 to 65 decibels of noise. The pops and bangs that you hear, that will result in 60 to 70 decibels of noise. And that's at 50 feet away. And we know there's residents here. We understand that, and we acknowledge that we're going to have some impact here. Some of the ideas that we have for mitigating that is to organize the beginner section closest to the residences and have the more advanced section down towards the edge of the park. We also feel like we can shape many of the features to project sound away from Western Avenue. We also propose a raised berm along the western boundary with vegetation that would, the vegetation mostly being a visual screen. We took noise measurements on Western Avenue. Jeff, was that today?
That was on Sunday, just about 11.
Sunday at 11. And we had readings of vehicle traffic in the neighborhood of 75 to 85 decibels. Motorcycles upwards of 80 decibels, and trucks as high as 95 decibels. So we can honestly say that we will not be increasing the level of sound across Western Avenue. Across Union Hill, there will be some sound impact, but at the edge of the site, we don't expect to exceed 70 decibels. Safety and security. This site is ideal in our mind. It's easily visible from Western Avenue. It's easily visible from the sidewalks. Helps to have residential properties in proximity to keep eyes on the street. It's very easy for a policeman to pull up in front of Western Ave and look in. If it's after hours, there's a curb cut right next to the bus stop. They can pull in and shine their lights right in it. There are concerns about liability. Again, those concerns are largely unfounded. Skating is a skate at your own risk activity, as is sledding and skiing. These are known risks when you're skating. The incidence of lawsuits on skate parks is very low. I can reference a study that looked at 48 skate parks in California with 2 lawsuits total, and both were thrown out. It's simply not. It's not a big concern for us. The skate park would be open sun up to sundown, not park hours, not after dark. It won't be lit. I'd also throw in about skating that it's lower risk than baseball, soccer, hockey, football, and baseball. There's a less incidence of injuries from skateboarding than all of those. We propose a fence around the top of the bank, around this area. Vermont League of Cities and Towns might require us to fence, or they have asked us to fence the entire park. We hope that reason will prevail in that regard, that we won't be required to fence the entire park, as the integration with the rest of the park would seem to be jeopardized by that, and we're not sure how much we gain in terms of safety or liability by putting a fence on it. There will be a sign that says "Skate at your own risk" and stating the hours of operation, and the recommendations for pads and helmets. There is a trash can at the bus stop. We'll likely provide another trash can. Part of the part of the long-term goal would be to create a walking route that went around the whole area of the park. I think that would make a nice tie the park together. We would like to purchase swings if the budget permits. We've been, like I said, we've been out for 18 months. We've raised about $45,000 in cash and pledges. We're feeling pretty good about that. We intend to raise $300,000 in order to get this project off the ground. And we'd like, if everything goes our way, we'd like to build next spring. I think that's all I have now. David,
Adam, can you tell me a little more about the landscaping, other than the berm, any additional trees, any additional shrubs, and what's the general health of the trees, especially the ones that will act as a noise buffer along Western Ave?
Well, the forested bank here is pretty thick. Those are in various stages of health. That bank would stay forested. We lost a huge oak tree in the corner here. That was a landscape asset, but not a buffer of any kind. There's some nice crab apple trees along the avenue, hickory, and then some sugar maples here. The sugar maples are coming of age. This used to be the old driveway to the estate here, so it's like a whole alley of trees. It's beautiful, but close to mature, so to speak. We'd like to see, one issue here is drainage. So we like to. This won't require a stormwater permit, but we will do the best we can as good citizens to treat the stormwater or accommodate the stormwater. We'd like to put a rain garden in the middle. We sheet flow most of the runoff off the park, and any depressions or low points will be drained. We talked to Public Works, and they suggested a dry well or an infiltration basin that would take any captured stormwater into a basin and then out to the street. The soils here are ideal for a skate park. One of the issues is maintenance. Like the quality of the skate park will depend on the ongoing maintenance that Rec and Parks has agreed to take over. But maintaining the quality of the concrete maintains the quality of the park and the use and the care. And these soils are just pure sands and gravels. So we can infiltrate a lot of runoff, and it's good.
And what's the jurisdictional trigger for a stormwater permit?
Acre of impervious.
Okay, and you're, how much under that are you?
This will be 12,000 square feet max plus a basketball court. So under,
What's
well
the-
under half an acre.
What's the coverage ratio for this district? Just
Residential
residential?
hall, but it's a 5-acre site, and we're covering about 5% of the site.
Yeah, that's it, huh?
Yeah. Adding 5%. If you threw in the basketball court, it might be, it might be 7%.
If I could just point out that this map is a snapshot of the western edge of this park, but the park from the overhead view, and I don't know if you have a full park picture, this park continues for quite a distance toward the Green Street School.
So the area of development, this is that row of trees for the lease, so the area of development, this is the steep bank, so this is the area of development.
Yeah, the maximum coverage in the district is 55%.
And the structure, we talk about concrete, the entire, the bowl and the other areas, it's all concrete?
All concrete.
Impervious concrete, or, I mean, how does the water, you've got drain holes in it? And
No, the idea would be to pitch it off the side and infiltrate through the grass, and not impervious concrete. Impervious concrete would add that texture that produces.
it gives a noise, yeah. So, if you talk about a bowl, I think of a bowl as going down.
Yes, this would be a bowl with a drain in it.
With the drain in it,
Yeah,
okay.
and then carry.
And then that you take the water from that drain off to your dry well and then on out to the stormwater in the street.
That's right.
And the other section, which is closer to Western Avenue, will be surface, approximately surface. Ground level.
Runoff, yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be at grade and.
At grade, sorry.
And pitch.
Okay.
Just to run off into the grass.
And the rear of the, let's call it, I guess the western end where you're going to the bank that drops down to Union Hill, that border there,
Yeah.
that's, you're proposing that's fenced?
This will definitely be fenced to prevent access and flying skateboards, I suppose, but definitely to discourage people from accessing that.
And what type of fence would that be?
Our goal is metal picket fence, not a chain link, but, it's our way to say, we don't have a budget for
So it's something that will assist with noise, reducing noise or transmitting some noise, a solid fence rather than a picket fence.
I suppose a solid stockade fence would help that, but again, our feeling is that the noise is, in most of the literature, the noise concerns are very heavy prior to construction, and noise complaints post-construction is virtually non-existent.
So the
It's
fence,
really not as noisy as people.
so the fence's primary purpose is for safety and to contain the lot rather than to mitigate noise.
That's right.
Is there any excavation?
Only for the bases. I think what would happen would be take off the top layer of topsoil, and then for certain structures, like such as the bowls and maybe a platform or something where you'd want to protect against frost heaving, you would go down 4 feet. But most of this, you merely have to go down to the gravel, which is about 12 inches below the surface.
Are there any, I don't know what the term, environmentally unfriendly materials?
We dug test pits out there, and like I said, the
Why
soil-
meant that you were using,
Oh,
adding to that site?
concrete would, it's unfriendly in the sense that it has to be produced somewhere.
Yeah.
What was the purpose of the other fence going around it?
Enclosing it,
Yeah.
I think it's probably a policy, part of standard language in the Vermont League of Cities and Towns liability policy.
So people don't just walk and fall into the
Yeah, probably protecting kids, you know, like, this is not going to be an extreme park. You know, there's some of these parks are very deep bowls and very advanced. Hopefully the reason will prevail in that regard. And I think it's probably also to help maintain hours of operation, so to speak. So if you're in the fence, when it's after hours, you're obviously breaking the rules, and that's clear. As opposed to
And hours of operation again? You said
Sun to sundown.
sunrise to sunset.
Yeah.
What are the hours of operation for the whole park?
10 to 6.
Yeah,
6
a.m. till 10 p.m. That's standard across all of our parks, Living Memorial and, so forth, because we do have lights out there around the basketball court, and 10 o'clock is kind of the, it's time to go home time type thing. I did want to elaborate just briefly on your comment on Vermont Leagues of Cities and Towns and their requirement that's kind of like standard across most communities, throughout the state as their recommendation. And what they are is recommendations that they're putting out for that.
Question for the chair. Is liability an issue for this board?
Nope.
Going back to the fence issue, who decides whether or not it goes up or not? I mean, you touched on the fact that you didn't want to put it. The idea was to not put it in a corner so it doesn't feel disconnected to the rest of the stuff going on. I feel like that fence would definitely not only disconnect it, but kind of defeats the whole purpose of, the eyes on the street concept. So
I think that's something that probably would be discussed at the management level between the town manager, myself, and maybe even one step further than the select board.
and you guys are going to be in charge of maintaining this over the years, and is that how, budget-wise, is that built into the fundraising, or is that part of the town's?
I think the first several years, it's really just going to be a matter of going and cleaning the site, much like what we're doing now. And right now, we're mowing the site. In this situation, we've been blowing the site, keeping it clear so it's safe for the boarders. I think it's more long-term down the road. That's why it's on the mindset of build it right the first time, so we're not back out there in a couple of years.
Does, I have a couple more questions. Does you mentioned, does Green Street School utilize this site, like the basketball court there?
They do. I don't know if they come as far as the basketball court.
It is the whole area. The school, for clarification, the school department owns the site.
Yep.
And the town has a lease for this particular site, as an agreement for this particular site. But in the overall picture, the town of Brattleboro Recreation Parks maintains the area. This is way before my time, where I think it had something to do at the time, way back when, that Recreation Parks had the equipment to maintain, like we maintain parks, instead of the school department going and buying further equipment to maintain the site. We already had that. We're in the business of maintaining parks, and that's, I believe, what the history is, why the school department owns it in the town of Brattleboro and maintains it. And we have a give and take relationship with all their facilities, where they use our facilities, we use their facilities.
Are there any limits to the hours that may be in use?
Only daylight hours.
Only daylight.
Yeah.
Are there any park hours that affect that, or?
Park is open 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. So the park would be open longer hours, but there'd be no, by rule, there'd be no skating at night. I would say on the maintenance and the surveillance and I'm impressed with our committee. Our committee has really stuck together. They're active. They're adults. Someone that's lived in the neighborhood. Like, we envision this as a sort of self-policing affair. I can't promise that, but it's going to be something that if it's done right and it's successful, it will be cared for by the participants as well.
There's a water fountain on the site, but it's inferred in somewhere that I read that it's not functioning or no longer maintained.
Currently, there is a crush pipe below ground, below level, and that is something
that we're hoping to address come the new fiscal year.
So that
So it'll be a functioning
that will be a
fountain.
functioning water fountain,
Right.
regardless of.
Whether there's a skate park there or not, there's
Yeah.
going to be that fountain should be
It's-
functioning later this summer.
It seems to me that people skating might want water.
And basketball, basketball.
And basketball.
And basketball.
and-
So that's a temporary thing that just happens to be.
It's been out for a little bit.
I mean, I think that, you know, this has really nice potential to add to this, you know, place to come, you know, a place for parents to drop their kids off, go downtown, and, you know, we want to provide a bike rack, and there's a bus stop there, and water fountain, and trash cans and stuff. This could be a really nice amenity for the town.
Actually, I used to live across the street, and I think the biggest noise concern I have, well, the thing that was always the loudest was the trucks air braking and the tow trucks at 3 a.m. backing up. You know, and other than that, I mean, you know, there are always people playing basketball when it's nice outside, and I really, you know, for the public who are concerned about the noise levels, I will say that living there, and it didn't really have much effect, even with the windows open during the summertime.
Yeah, and I am very familiar with the skate parks when I was on the West Coast. And I have to tell you that I live on High Street, and between the motorcycles that go down there, and I mean, I almost lifted off my chair on 105 the other day. There's no way a skateboard is even going to come close to that kind of noise at all.
The Town of Brattleboro Planning Services Department had a couple of comments. I think we've addressed some of them. One we may not have is that there's a sidewalk, two pathways to the skate park are proposed. I guess where are those? There. And there any pathway to the other park elements?
No is the answer.
And I think that's what the town would prefer, in order to discourage people from riding there.
Say that again?
I think the town planning service department it just would discourage a path directly from the skate park over to the other elements, lest people skate on it.
Unless we made it maybe gravel or something.
Yeah.
That was kind of my vision, or our vision was a gravel path that people could walk.
Okay. I think that may be a condition of the board, then, that any additional non-skate elements are gravel and not paved.
Does that have to be plowed or not plowed, but some kind of measure taken to keep the snow and ice off or anything? And what happens when it?
I think when the weather comes, the weather will be there. You know, as someone who's played on the Kroll lot for years, you know, we bring out brooms if it's raining and sweep off the court, and I imagine people will try to keep the skate park open as long as they can. But yeah, when there's snow and ice on there, I think it'll be on there.
And from a management standpoint, we don't, as he just said, if they want to play basketball, they would go out and shovel it themselves, because the department doesn't have that means to go out and keep that in any of our parks. The one park that we keep open is Living Memorial, keep that plowed and everything. But some of our smaller pocket parks, we do not provide that service.
Does the park stay open from 6 to 10 even in the winter, even though it gets dark, or does it stay closed? Because at one point in time.
We have a lot of sliders at Living Memorial.
Yeah.
Past that 6
Yeah.
o'clock hour.
Because if you're going to have lighting, I mean, I assume that the basketball court is lit. Is that lit at night?
It is lit, but then once it's a seasonal thing. So, for example, you know, come late, middle fall, you know, we'll turn the timer so those lights are not on at all in the park. And then in the spring, we'll turn the timer back on so that there's lights for the basketball. But this particular area will not be lit.
And you're not stormwater jurisdictional, sorry. But do you have a stormwater plan that you can submit to the board?
There is, I believe the plan you have shows the dry well. It does show the area drain on the bowl, an area drain on the north section,
and then out to the street.
and a dry well and an infiltration basin.
Okay.
The trick here is,
And this is round down to a rain garden.
probably for those who haven't seen it, we would put a drain, an area drain here, maybe another drain on this side, and then a dry well or infiltration basin here. There are two catch basins along Western Avenue, one near the bus stop and one down the hill. The trick is going to be able to make that grade to this catch basin. It might require us coming down from the dry well over to this catch basin. Which we looked at with them.
Okay, and we'll require an as-built for the stormwater plan.
I've got the map that's up on the screen right now. Can you just, have you got something that comes out a little bit? Let's talk about the closest residences to.
I think the closest one is this house just down Union Hill. The first floor of this is topographically separated. This is quite a bit lower, but the upper floors are closest to this. Is the closest residence to this area of the park. Again, the bank comes up. According to my scale, the house is probably 120 feet away from the nearest park element. And again, we were trying to have this be the beginner section and shape the elements of it.
And then Union Hill, there's nothing else on the right side going down.
Nothing down through here.
All the way, so there's nothing there. And then the bottom?
These are topographically separated. We don't expect much impact to these residences.
Yeah.
These buildings, these houses across the street,
and they have
are about 150 feet away.
And they have Western Avenue and Route 9 in between.
That's right.
And to the other side?
To the east, there's a school district building here that runs some special programs in the Green Street schools here.
Okay.
Any other members of the board have questions regarding this application? Any members of the public have questions or comments regarding this application? Please come up, introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Brant Kurowski. I live at 15 Union Street, which is the blue house, one down from Western Avenue if you were heading downhill down Union.
Is that this one?
Yes, that is that one. It should go without saying, but it's probably worth saying that I am excited for Brattleboro to have a skate park. I think we need one. I have had concerns since I first heard about this particular location with the suitability of this location. And so I apologize for getting this. I believe maybe you all have copies of the
We have
letter I wrote. Sorry you got it so late. I didn't really know that the application materials were available until Friday
That's fine,
afternoon.
it's not late, we have it.
So this is as early as I could get this information to you. My concerns are basically, I think that the facts or the details presented in the application aren't entirely correct. There are some facts that I would dispute. And so I wanted to be sure that you knew those, because I think while maybe individually some of them might seem like, oh, well, we can let that slide, or that's no big deal, I think taken as a whole, the overall picture of the impact of the skate park on the existing lot and on the community around it is very different if you take into account all of these discrepancies. I think the first thing that really caught my eye about the application was that it was submitted as a minor site plan. My understanding of the zoning ordinances are that structures over 5,000 feet require a major site plan. Maybe because it's, poured concrete, that's 12,000 square feet, it's not considered a major structure. But, being 12,000 square feet and having some major structures like the bowl and the half pipe, I think, does warrant the more in-depth investigation that a major site plan would come with. I also think it should be a major site plan because the zoning ordinance states that it should be deemed major if the The development affects the public rights to or enjoyment of any historic or scenic area. I think there's no doubt that this is a scenic area. It also happens to be historic. It's where the first obelisk on the Molly Stark byway is located. It's a relatively new historic marker, but it does form people's first impression of the 48-mile Molly Stark byway, and I think it's, not necessarily a non-starter, but certainly worth taking into consideration before we go pour 12,000 square feet of concrete right next to it. Finally, an application shall be deemed major if the development may significantly impact the town's streetscape, natural landscape, or rights of abutting property owners. Well, at the various public forums that have been held regarding the skate park, numerous abutting property owners have voiced their concern about the impact that the skate park will have on their rights. So I think that those property owners have the right to see a major site plan with more detail presented than we have in front of us right now. Moving on, the application states that the existing noise levels are 80 decibels. I'm not sure where that number comes from. Adam just said that they measured it on Sunday. I measured it as well. I came up with very different measurements. I used a ANSI and IUC 651 Type 2 standard sound level meter. This complies with the ASTM standards for measuring noise, both for municipal and regulatory purposes. Before each measurement, I calibrated it with the sound calibrator made expressly for that purpose to within 0.1 decibels. I took the measurements using the standard A weighting, which basically models human hearing because the human ear is more sensitive to certain frequencies than to other. And so I took 3 sets of measurements, from right in front of my house on Union Street, so not on Western Avenue. Perhaps that explains the discrepancies. But where I'm located, I got ambient noise levels of approximately 55 decibels. And I got peaks when traffic drove by of 65 decibels. And just to make sure that I wasn't cherry-picking measurements, I set up a data logger to record a couple hours worth of data at each point. And you can see that in the charts that I included. You see occasional spikes up above 60, close to 70 decibels, but certainly not an average noise level of 80 decibels. And so, yeah, the average noise level is really, I would say, quite lower than even 65 decibels. And to contrast that with, so the application said the existing noise level is above 80 decibels and that the skate park will only create 65. And in sound measurement, that would mean that the adding 65 decibels to 80 would mean it's not a perceptible increase in sound. It's really close to the other way around. So the existing is much quieter than 80, closer to 65. I don't know where the 65 decibel estimate for what the noise from the skate park would be came from, but I took, we can't measure it right now because it doesn't exist. So I looked at published studies of existing skate parks and the noise that they generate. And in fact, the easiest ones to find are ones that are put forth by skate park advocates as examples of how little noise skate parks make. So I think they've cast skate parks in the most favorable light possible. The first one was actually provided to me by David Longsmith, the president of BASIC. It's a study of the Burnside Skate Park in Portland, Oregon, which is also a smooth concrete facility. It generated noise levels of up to 71 decibels when measured from 50 feet away. So 50 feet away is certainly outside the boundaries of this park. Another study that's widely cited by skate park advocates is from the Ballard Civic Center Park in Seattle, Washington. Also contains a concrete bowl and a street section similar to this design. Measurement next to the bowl in this study found a peak level of 91 decibels. Measurement from across the street found a peak level of 83 decibels. And finally, another study compared noise levels of skate parks of various constructions, basically to point out how quiet concrete skate parks are when compared to the metal and wooden construction that people tend to think of about skate parks. Well, this was done in Santa Monica, the concrete in-ground park there. The testers measured it at 78 decibels at the bowl, 76 decibels elsewhere inside the park, 74 decibels at the park entrance, and 70 decibels from 30 feet outside the park. And it's worth noting these measurements were done with C weighting instead of A weighting. A weighting is what's specified by ASTM standards for noise measurement, because C weighting tends to underrepresent human auditory response because we are more sensitive to middle and upper frequencies. So the A-weighted numbers would probably be higher than those figures I just gave you. So I think when you look at any of those three studies, or particularly all three combined, it's pretty clear that this skate park will generate noise above 70 decibels, even outside of the boundaries of the skate park. Another thing that bothered me about the application was that in Form L, it talks about, there's a question regarding changes of the character to the area, where the application glossed over this and basically said that it'll improve the area, we'll have mixed use, and that's that. Concerns about the change to the area have been raised already in several public forums by the existing users of the park. I have talked to people at the park and have received unanimously negative expectations of what the impact of the skate park will be to existing users. The park is used on a daily basis by a multitude of families with small children. These children play by the swing sets and on the play structure, but they keep their distance from the basketball court. I don't think this is any surprise because a basketball court with grown men playing on it is no place for small children to be. They shouldn't be near it. They're both intimidated because it's large men being loud and aggressive, which is how basketball is played. But children are afraid of that, and as well they should be, because occasionally you have a ball flying outside of the boundaries of the court, and kid doesn't belong there. So it's disturbing to see that the play structure and the swings would be relocated right next to the basketball court. Even with the ball field right next to it, it's not in use all the time, but when it is, all of a sudden you have no safe place for kids to be. So the existing users of the park that I've talked to, they universally expect to be crowded out and to no longer use the troll lot park once the skate park is there. The basketball users will probably stay. The skaters will come. So some people will be enjoying it. But it is certainly an impact to the existing character, and I think that's worth considering in the application. Another thing that I found omitted on Form L was a question about how it will conform to zoning bylaws. And there is a zoning bylaw, I believe, Ordinance 4210, which my understanding of it says that the following conditions must not exist at the individual property line: noise in excess of 70 decibels. I hope I've very clearly demonstrated that the skate park will generate noise in excess of 70 decibels at the property line, and this non-compliance with ordinances was not included in the application, so I think that is also worth considering in your decision. Another thing that I noticed when reviewing the diagrams attached to the application was the mention that the berm would be 3 feet high, and the cover letter states that this vegetated berm along Union Hill is there for noise abatement. Well, standing on my front porch, I can see, if there were a 3 feet berm there, I could see the entire skate park anyway. And as far as noise abatement is concerned, if you don't block line of sight, you don't block noise. Even if you do block line of sight, you don't block all noise because sound waves will diffract around edges. But as it is, the berm as planned will have zero noise reduction impact for my home, even from the first floor on up. The home next to me, Barb Buttery and her family, they're even higher than I am. So they will also not enjoy any noise abatement. So that berm is completely ineffective as far as noise abatement is concerned. The vegetated fence on top of it could provide visual screening, but nothing auditory. The trees that are there will provide no auditory screening. I have several sources I cited in the letter that basically explain that if you're trying to get noise abatement from vegetation, you need 75 to 100 feet thick, dense foliage. So there is effectively no sound abatement there. So I think, in summary, it's just worth saying this site plan is not nearly detailed enough, I think, for the abutters to understand, the impact it will have on their rights as property owners nearby. I don't think it's detailed enough for the current users of the park to understand how it will impact them. I think it grossly misstates the impact of noise in the surrounding areas. And there are other miscellaneous details in here I mentioned about, little factual errors. And I think when you just take this all together, I worry that there are other factual problems in here that are not so obvious. I got this on Friday afternoon. I looked over it. I wrote this letter when I could over the weekend. I called out what I saw to help inform your decision. I'm sure there's stuff in there that I didn't see because I'm not an expert and because I didn't have much time to review this. So I think this certainly deserves further review. Those are really my only concerns, in terms of zoning regulations and review of this application specifically. In particular, in general, I'm concerned that the plan is for the skate park to be unsupervised. I know that there are a lot of hesitation in communities about skate parks bringing increased crime, increased littering, things like this. And there's also plenty of evidence of skate parks doing the opposite. I think there's evidence both ways. And I think a lot of the reason you see a decrease of crime at the skate park is because oftentimes they're supervised. So I do have concerns about the park being unsupervised. There have been other towns who have done broad studies of other skate parks, supervised and unsupervised, in municipalities around them, and having carefully considered the options, have decided to stick with supervised skate parks. So I think that's worth considering. I am apprehensive about the reliance on neighborhood watch for policing this. I think if you're building a noisy facility next to these neighbors, there's already an inherent conflict in that relationship between the neighbors and the people using the skate park. I think then to have the neighbors being the ones who are policing the skate park sets up an inherently adversarial relationship that's unhealthy. For example, if I call in a teen user of the skate park one day for staying there too late, past when it's closed, the next day for a noise violation, if this keeps going on, he might start to feel persecuted, and that's not healthy. Especially if I'm the one who's supposed to be there to help him if he falls down and gets injured. I'd like it to be a healthy relationship between the skate park and the neighbors. I'm also concerned about the plan for it to be a mixed-use park. Everything I've read said that mixed-use parks require more maintenance. Bikes do damage to skate parks. Even if it's a skate park designed for mixed use, bikes just cause increased wear and tear. The wear and tear also makes it less safe for skaters. Bikes track in rocks. Skaters, when those small wheels hit small pebbles, stop suddenly. Makes it dangerous. My understanding is that injury rates and injury severity are higher when you have a mixed-use park. Finally, I was alarmed to learn about there's the Brat Skate Art Spots project, which will be building metal ramps to be movable pieces of skatable art around town, which I think is a fantastic idea. But I was alarmed to hear that the skate park has expressed a desire to host them because of all the evidence that metal structures are so much louder than concrete, and I've already demonstrated that concrete is too loud for this location. So, just to sum it up, my concerns, it's not about skate parks in general. It's just with this particular location. A lot of the studies that you read, some of the studies that I cited that talk about neighbors complaining about noise and have then done studies to basically say it's not too much, these are talking about skate parks with the nearest residences being 200 or 300 feet away. And you find, skate park building guides that you can get online that suggest you site your skate park at least 100, preferably 200 yards away from the nearest residence. I used a laser rangefinder standing on my front porch and ranged it to the tree. There's a large tree that marks where the edge of the park would be, and it's 80 feet away. I went over to the park and repeated the same measurement. this today from the other direction. I'm 80 feet away from where this skate park is supposed to be. I'm sorry, but that's too close. That's, as far as I'm concerned, it would be unconscionable to build a facility this loud, that close to any private residence. If it were someone else's home, I'd be up here defending them as well. It's been brought up in some of the earlier meetings offhandedly that, you know, I must just be prejudiced against skaters, and I have to strenuously contest that because I used to be a skater when I was growing up. I hope that my daughters, when they get older, will enjoy skating. I am really in favor of Brattleboro having a skate park. I think it's, you know, unfortunate that it's taken this long to find a location, but I also think it's unfortunate that the skate park committee has put so much energy into this particular location because it is so clearly inappropriate. I think that's obvious on a simple inspection of the facts, but the skate park committee seems to be acting with a kind of desperation. It's been described to me by members of the committee that this location is make or break for them. And I don't know that that's a healthy way to plan a facility like this. So I hope that the rest of the town doesn't get caught up in the same desperation to finally have a skate park and can really take measured, reasonable steps to find a more suitable location. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other members of the public wish to provide comment to the board?
Hi, my name's Herb Eisenberg. I live at 27 Western Ave across the street. I guess that would make me a NIMFY, not a NIMBY. It's in my front yard. I was going to say a lot more that the chairman has indicated. The question of whether or not it ought to be at this site or not is not what this board is looking at right now. And I don't think there's a lot that I can add to what Brent said, but I do want you to know that we feel from the get-go that we were misled, not deliberately, but we were misled because of facts that were misunderstood. The skate park had been designed at the West River and was turned down because it was in the buffer zone, not because it was a stormwater problem like we were told. We are very concerned about our property values, of course, but we're even more concerned about the traffic that will be generated. I noted in the recent reading I've done about from the skate park design guide that this skate park doesn't meet the minimums that they talk about. They talk about having a totally separate minimum 3,000 square foot beginner areas for safety and approximately minimum 10,000 to 10,000 up to 18,000 for intermediate and experts. And the safety issue is you cannot mix the beginners with the intermediates and the experts. You're going to have accidents. There's also will be the need for a fence. The fence was discussed, and it is, of course, an issue. I have to tell you, as an architect, aesthetically, the whole thing is pretty disturbing. I do like green grass, and I've designed concrete, but it's not my wish to be looking at it out my front window. But that's irrelevant. I understand. But the misled part of it, I'm not blaming anybody. It was because people didn't realize that it was not saying you couldn't have a skate park there, just where it was located, and when the plans were revised, the skate park was not put back. The size and scale of this is very disturbing. Skate park for a municipality, the design guide recommends that a number of smaller parks be dispersed around the town in various areas, and that one big skate park not be put as part of the whole town project. You know, what is going to happen with this, with the traffic, is following. I do not know. Is the town going to pay to put toilets in here, which is a notable absence, by the way? And how do we handle the problem of the load of cars on Route 9 and this very difficult intersection at Cedar, Union, and Western Ave? There is a constant stream of traffic And I'm intrigued by the claim that there's enough parking space for this relatively large area because there are three constituencies that will be using them: the basketball court and the children's playground and the skate park. So, and that's all on-street parking, which is really pretty darn limited. So I feel that there's a tremendous impact with this. We are going to have people come to this for events, and they're going to come by car. We're going to have people coming from all around because they're doing their best to build a first-class skate park. And yes, I'm not against skate parks. I shouldn't have to say that, but we would like to see it somewhere else.
Thank you. Yes.
Mary Kane, District 2 Rep. I want to commend this fantastic committee who has spent, almost 2 years at least to bring something to Brattleboro that we don't have in this particular area. We do have an indoor with the Boys and Girls Club, which is phenomenal. I have 3 teenage children. In one summer alone, we went to 11 skate parks throughout New England, and then to Woodward, Pennsylvania, where skateboarding is a camp for all summer long. This will bring an incredible amount of pride to our community from the young people, and something that you cannot put a dollar figure on. And as far as cars, I'm going to say that there are going to be less cars than you expect, because most of these children don't drive. They come, and in this particular spot is phenomenal because they can actually get there and walk there and not have parents in order to get them there. And I have to say that as far as bringing Brattleboro as being the one and only, this will give to our area as well as northern areas within maybe 20 miles from here or longer, Greenfield perhaps. It will give us an excellent opportunity to show how well we can say to the next generation that we recognize this is a sport, this is a world-class possibility. You could have individuals who can compete at a level that we would never have had if we don't have it. And in addition to that, you need to understand that there aren't that many sports for individuals here that are non-competitive. And as far as individuals, in my experience, being a parent, as far as littles mixing with olders, it's a phenomenally great sport because the olders look after the littles. I've never seen anything like it in other sports, but they do. And the bowls are phenomenal. You will see that the individuals who use this skate park, I believe, will be more considerate because they appreciate this. This is something that they dream of, honestly. When you're a younger person, to be able to give this in our area of Vermont is absolutely fantastic, and I would definitely consider that you have gotten very far, and I would love for you to be able to have this. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Thanks. My name is Ken Nicolai, and I have a house on 24 Oak Crest. The side of the house abuts Western Avenue. And my concern here is as the other folks in the neighborhood have mentioned, the noise levels. I was quite surprised to hear Mr. Hubbard say that the ambient levels are 80 decibels. I actually purchased a sound meter a few years ago because I was trying to see how I might minimize some of the noise on my porch. And while I got some high readings, the overall ambient level was nowhere near 80. We do indeed have noise problems coming from the traffic, the big trucks that come through and using their air brakes inappropriately. But we already have pretty high noise levels at times. But what you're going to be doing here is adding a very high noise level at a much greater frequency than what we have already. So don't burden us that much. So the noise level, like I said, the reading that I certainly have taken does not jive with the levels that are in the application. The other thing I would ask that you think about is just simply basic human behavior. While in fact the parks are supposed to be people will be supposed to be leaving at dark. Excuse me, Fritz. We already have a problem with the basketball court. Just in the last month, we've had to call the police department several times because people are out there at 3 in the morning making a lot of noise. While ideally people would leave at dark, they don't. And the absolute worst noise experience I've had since I've owned the house over the last 10 years has been when Basic had their big event last year. That was for the first time when I felt it was necessary. I actually called the town manager and several other people because even with the windows closed, the glass was rattling in my windows. And so I am very concerned about the noise levels here, and maybe there's some other abatement things that you can do to help minimize the noise. But as I've heard from the discussion, as things stand right now, I'm quite concerned. Thank you.
Thank you. One second. Can you just show me on the map where your house is?
Let's see. I'm not very good with maps. Let's see. Where?
Here's house.
Okay. Is this just that hill?
Yeah, it's just on the hill.
Okay. So I'm right here.
You're on the corner.
On the corner.
That big wall. Yeah.
The big wall and the wooden fence that comes around.
Okay. Thank you.
Spent a bunch of money putting up a brand new fence there.
Thank you.
So the walkway is there.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm Fritz Engstrom, and my wife and I own the house that's right on the corner of Cedar and Western, right next to Herb's, on the town side of Cedar. Yeah. My name's Fritz, F-R-I-T-Z, Engstrom. And yeah, I too. It's a mixed feeling. I have a son. He has a skateboard. I hope he'll have a skateboard park someday. It's a lot of fun, and I wish they were around when I was a kid. And I think we do need a site. I see kids trying to skateboard in places in town where they shouldn't because there aren't any outdoor facilities. But the site just makes no sense to me living across the street. I first wanted to ask Brant a question. You talked about decibels quite a bit, and I appreciate the work you put into it. When there are no motorcycles coming down Western Ave, I mean, what's the decibel level at other times? We talked about the high levels, but the low levels must be pretty low.
55.
But below 55 do they get, or just regular 55?
I don't know.
Okay. In any event, the point is, as another gentleman pointed out with the noise, currently it fluctuates. Yes, we hear 5 motorcycles going through. It's high. But then there's a quiet time. Minutes, hours even. But, with a constantly used skateboard park, we're talking about a constant level of ambient noise. And that would be significant. I really appreciate Brant's comments and research on this. They talked about a buffer being minimal. Living across the street, I don't see how there could be a buffer. And talked about the trees. There are aging trees. Not only did one huge one go down, they just cut down another one. There are several other aging trees. There is really fairly non-existent noise abatement as far as I can tell. And the discussion about the fence was interesting because on the one hand, if it were a picket fence with holes, there'd be no noise abatement. But if it's solid, I hear people saying it would change the visual character of the neighborhood. I mean, if you're going to have a successful noise abatement, you're going to have to somehow really change the visual character of the area. And so I just, the noise alone is going to be significant. Parking, I disagree with the person who said that there would not be a parking problem. And days that there are, weekend days when there are basketball games there, there's already a parking problem. I mean, there are no parking places. People park illegally across the street at times. And if this park brings in the sort of people, the numbers that we anticipate, of course there's going to be a problem with parking. And the question was raised about toilets. Most of us have that problem that we have to face sometime during the day. The unsupervised nature of the park is also unclear and concerning. Already I'm concerned about the town's ability to take care of this. Right now there is a decent amount of litter. Every time I'm there with my son, I always pick up some, put it in my pocket, as the one garbage can is often overflowing. I would probably call the police more than I already do, but it already is a problem. And as someone said, no matter how well-intentioned you are, there are going to be some loiterers after hour that can only make things worse. We all see occasional drug deals and so forth, and it could only, with more people there, have the same problems. And I don't believe that our police are planning any further surveillance of the area than they currently have. The mixed use is also very concerning to me. There are a few places in town that are good playgrounds for little children, as opposed to Living Memorial, which is for a little older. These are for little children, and as someone pointed out, it is separate from the basketball court. It is important to be separate from the basketball court. Even so, it is tenuous. There are balls. It is rough and tumble, and it is already, a bit dicey at times. I've seen two grown men have a fist fight over some uncalled fouls on the basketball court, and to have even less separation is a problem, much less having it between that and baseball. Whenever there's baseball, I don't see how children could safely have an area with a basketball court that's active and a baseball diamond. Again, with the town's ability to keep it up, that water fountain you mentioned, I've been there 6.5 years. It's been broken the entire time. Talked about the fence. There's currently about 4 sections out of the fence, many of which have been down for more than a year. To suggest that the town's going to be able to do a better job in the future with limited financial resources, I doubt it. Even the trash is often not picked up, as I mentioned. All this kind of translates, unfortunately, if ever my wife puts me into a nursing home, I don't see how I can ever sell the house unless there could be a limited number of buyers, perhaps those who are either hard of hearing like myself or who have teenagers who promise never to get older. But for others, it's not going to be a very palatable place to have a residence with constant noise during the spring, summer, and fall months of the year. I'm sorry I have to be negative on it because I like the concept, and I'm sorry they put, as another speaker said, sorry they put so much effort into this particular site, because I think we need a skateboard park, but not in a residential zone. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Barry Adams, and I live at 64 Western Avenue, which is 2 houses to the west of Park. And I moved here 8 years ago with my partner, and we've invested a lot of money into the house in terms of aesthetically. And I think that I'm not against the skate park, and I agree with this woman said that Brattleboro would do well to have a skate park. But there are a number of disincentives to living on Western Avenue. And when Dr. Engstrom just spoke, I wanted to say that if this doesn't pan out to be this unobtrusive, project, there's already a number of disincentives to living on Western Avenue. One is Western Avenue. And if people take flight, you can enter the town through exit 1 off the interstate, or exit 3. And exit 2 is really the only appealing exit. And as you leave the interstate and go downtown through High Street,
there's a number of, some of the most beautiful homes in Brattleboro are on Western Avenue. So I have some concern that we're going to take this bucolic park, which everybody loves, fill it with concrete structures, and I admit I don't know anything about skateboarding or skate parks. But right off the cuff, it's very unappealing, and the noise level, of course, everybody's spoken about that. So I just wanted to say that my primary concern is that we're going to take the one entrance into the town that is really lovely and do something that might not serve the interests of the town in the end.
Thank you. Any other members of the public have questions or comments regarding this application? But try to compile a list if we can. Oh, sorry. Yes, please. Sorry, sir.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm John Wilmerding. With my wife, Carmen, we live, I'll show you where the house is, on this corner, the corner of Chestnut Hill and High Street, which is across the street from the park. I've had ample occasion to speak with my neighbors about the prospect of having the skate park there. I've also attended a couple of meetings of the Basic Committee in order to express my support for the premise of a skate park in Brattleboro. I was a skateboarder myself when I was a teenager, and it's loads of fun. It's good, healthy fun, very athletic, and good for your all-around development. And I didn't do it socially. Maybe that's because I was kind of a loner as a kid. But I also think that skateboarding can be a beneficial thing socially, and I'm not afraid of any sort of quote-unquote element of people that would want to use a skate park. I do have some questions, though. I would like to see our community get to yes on having a skate park. I think that we have been talking about it far too long, and I think that there has to be some kind of a trade-off of our needs and what we might gain in return for what we might lose. My wife and I purchased this property last September about the same time that Kimberly Hunn moved out from the downstairs apartment. I hope it wasn't so she wouldn't have to live near us. But I really hear the concern about existing traffic noise. It is a real problem there, and I would like to see the town enforce noise ordinances in that area, especially regarding motorcycles and automobiles that roar through with no mufflers whatsoever, trucks, large trucks that have no actual business in town, coming down Western Avenue and hitting their air brakes and making tremendous roars to shake the foundations of one's home. But let me just speak to the premise of the park. I think if we were going to get to yes on a skate park at this location, we should have some questions answered. I would be very happy, for example, to see an elevation, an architect's drawing of the elevation of the park, so that we saw how high certain things sat and how low certain things sat, and whether there would indeed be any sort of earthen berms or adequate sound buffers to muffle the noise of the skateboard wheels hitting the pavement in the park. Because the sound is going to go by line of sight for the most part with this kind of an application, I think. I mean, there may be, as there was testimony here, a roar that comes from this that I don't know about. I'm not an expert on this. But I think that the board should do due diligence in examining these things and getting some expert opinions. Will there be a noise problem? Will there be a parking problem? The life of that area, that neighborhood, is cyclical. You have quiet times that we treasure. You have other times when there's a lot more noise, like during business hours, when we know that we're going to get some noise. You know, another major problem is road dust. I think that a lot of that is diesel particulate, but I don't think it is going to be affected by the skate park. The lights issue. I know from the local lore, from talking with my neighbors, that when the basketball court was installed. First, it did not have lights. Then there was a campaign to have lights at the basketball court so that people could go and play there a little later into the evening. And there was a lot of local opposition to that, but eventually it passed. So I think that we should maybe look back at that and see, you know, there are examples where the community weighs the pros and cons of all this and comes to unity on this. I think that the part of this that bothers me the most is that there's a perception that this is sort of crept up on us a little bit without due diligence and without real discernment in the town. I'm distressed that the town and the residents feel in conflict over this. I would like to get to yes somehow so that we do have a skate park, and maybe part of the answer would be to build it in stages so that you have the beginner and the intermediate area go up first. And then you measure and you see, well, how much impact is this having on the area? Would it be more of a problem if we build an area for more advanced skaters? I don't know exactly what the situation is, but to just speak for a moment in favor of a skate park, there are a lot of people who really want this, including myself. We want a skate park in Brattleboro. Look at the number of people, I'm sure it's a very large number of people who have supported the skate park initiative philanthropically. They have given out of love for this idea, out of love for our children, so that we will have this as an asset for our community. I hope that everyone in the room might keep in mind, just sort of sit with the idea for a moment, that we might get to yes on a skate park. We're not sure yet where, but let's see due diligence from the Development Review Board, get some expert opinions about this particular site.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wish to provide comments or evidence to the board? As I was saying earlier, I've collected a few questions that have come up from comments and questions from members of the public. I'll query the applicant here. The first is, this is being treated as a minor site plan. There's no difference in the criteria by which we make a decision as a development review board between a major and a minor site plan. The major site plan, grab that, 1555, that. Well, that's the classification. The criteria by which we make our decision are always the same, major or minor. We determine if the application is consistent with traffic and pedestrian access, circulation, parking, landscaping and screening, and protection and utilization of renewable energy resources, and some of those have some sub-criteria. But the difference between a major and a minor site plan is that the major site plan shows additional detail on the site plan itself. The decision regarding whether an application should be a major or minor site plan in the first instance is the zoning administrators. So you determined, Brian, that this would qualify as a minor site plan.
I looked over the information submitted. It seemed like the additional information for a major site plan are mostly related to elevations.
Yeah, and I've done that. I've done that too. But it does look like there are some, maybe two areas, or maybe just one area under 1556B, which is the major site plan submission requirements. I think it would be helpful to see a landscape plan with a little more detail, and that was actually a request from the town of Brattleboro as well, including the size and type of plant material. So if you can give us an idea of what kind of trees are there, that would be helpful. There was a request for elevations as well. And I'm scanning quickly to see if the elevations are typically included.
It's a part of major.
Is that a part of major? Which is that? That's 17 elevation plans to scale. I think that would also be a helpful addition if we could have just a sense of the height of the elements. And it could be a single viewpoint elevation. I don't think you need multiple viewpoint elevations, but a single elevation for the site would be good. So I'm just going to not modify the zoning administrator's decision that it is a minor site plan, but note that we would be benefited by some additional information that would have been supplied in a major, and that's 13 and 17. So we can provide more information to the members of the public as well, the butters who have spoken tonight. Rarely do we get such a pristine measure by which to evaluate a project as 4210A of the zoning ordinance, which is a restriction on the decibel level for new construction. So this is a general standard that applies to all new development, all land development in the town of Brattleboro, and just states clearly that noise can't be in excess of 70 decibels. I think it would be very helpful for the board to have a noise study. This isn't a terribly complicated issue, it's not a terribly complicated site, but a noise study at some key property boundaries. And I'd say not the road. I would go on the residential side of the road. I don't care to protect the people who are driving on the road.
Including Brant, these three properties.
Yeah, that'd be great. If we could have noise levels, but it doesn't really matter what the existing noise level is, except that I want to have a baseline noise level, and then also a representative, because it also doesn't matter that it's 90 decibels or 80 decibels in the site or at the facility. The measurement for the purposes of the zoning ordinance is at the abutter's property line. So a representative noise level inside the site, and then a reading at the outside of the site, at the property line. You were going to say?
The risk of sounding perverse, the 70 decibels, it's a completely meaningless ordinance, because it doesn't state whether it's averaged over what period. Is it 70 decibels average over 24 hours? Is it peak?
I don't know.
It doesn't mean anything.
But it would be nice to have a noise study
correct.
to have a better understanding of the noise impact.
I'm not disagreeing. I think it'd be a very good thing to have a noise study and attempt to understand the situation as it exists. As a guideline for us to make a decision, if it's 71, what are we going to do? Say, we're one over?
I don't know.
Okay.
Actually, they showed us that this one evidence we have of a graph shows you the numbers of times in a period that a noise level is exceeded and how high. So, in fact, it can be meaningful. A single incident, of course, is hard to make a decision on, but if you look at a graph and you can imagine that a certain sound can be exceeded 100 times or 200 times or 300 times, it becomes meaningful.
Yeah, a noise study for that purpose would be great. I'd like to understand the noise impact on the abutters. I think also, you guys have been at this a long time. Well, hang on, just one more. You guys have been at this a long time, and really happy that you have, and applaud your diligence. We'd like to, I think, spend a little more time on this as well. Probably a site visit in this particular case would be really helpful. Mm-hmm. So and we'll schedule that probably for the next meeting, and especially if we have the elevations at that time, we can take a walk of the site and see where the elements are going to be in their height and their relationship to each other. Sorry, you were saying, Al?
Well, I think it's very important to respond to Brant's comment and put it in the context of the fellow who was reflecting on the fact that he had a noise meter. I forget who it was who said he had a noise meter at his house somewhere.
Yeah, that was it.
Fritz and
No, it wasn't. No, it was on the corner of Oak Grove. Yes, that property.
It was this, and in Brant's graphs, he's I'm not sure you're getting the full picture. The noise from a traveling skateboard is less than 60 decibels. The noise from a traveling car or truck is upwards of 70 up to 80, 85 decibels. The graph that he shows a line, to Spoon's point, that there's a level of noise. That level of noise falls away very quickly, as evidenced by this fellow taking a reading at his house, saying it didn't reach 80. Well, Jeff was on the side of the street measuring 85, so you get some, I don't pretend to be an expert in sound attenuation, but sound falls off over distance at some rate that tells us this guy doesn't have a problem with the 80 decibels of constant noise. Brant also spoke to that and saying, well, I'm a certain distance off of Western Avenue, and I get a reading of 50 or 60 decibels of noise. So and this is the constant noise. The constant noise of a skateboard is less than 60 decibels. It's the bang.
One skateboard.
Of one or many. Of a skateboard park in action. The ambient noise is less than 65 decibels. It's the bang of the skateboard is similar to a baseball bat hitting a ball. You know, it's not a, it's a spike that he's using for his reference of saying at 50 feet from the park, we're getting readings of 70 decibels. That's 50 feet from the park, 70 decibels. That's totally different than the road. You know, that's totally different than a constant level of noise. So I don't think that while his research is exhaustive, I don't think it's giving you the full picture of the noise impact here. I think it's very important for people to understand the noise at a skate park before speaking so vehemently about it. It's different than a road.
And it would be helpful, a fulsome explanation of that issue with a rudimentary noise study would give this board ample information to make an informed decision.
I would just quite. We look at consider background noise or noise floor. Actually, noise floor is a better way of talking about it. We can get the noise, establish the noise floor in the park from Western Avenue at the entrance to the park as it stands right now.
Okay. Also, I know, just to make sure we're crossing all our T's and dotting all our I's, that the applicant has completed portions of the Brattleboro land use application dealing with conditional use criteria. But I don't believe that conditional use criteria is appropriate in this case because this is an existing use, and the use is broadly described as public recreation use.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and that's your interpretation as well?
Yes, Adam had already submitted the forms.
Okay, great. So I don't think that this board should, and we won't, evaluate this application under conditional use criteria because the use, broadly defined, is already there. The site plan clearly is jurisdictional, and we will review that. Carol, you might be able to help me understand how many of Brattleboro's parks now have some level of supervision?
Only Living Memorial and only for scheduled activities, for example, the skating rink, the swimming pool, but we don't have supervision at any of our parks. Brattleboro Common, Wells, Wells Fountain here, Pine Street, South Main Street, there's no supervision in any of our parks.
How does a supervised park work? What is it? Like a chaperone of some sort that's paid volunteer?
You'd either have to have a trained volunteer or paid staff if you were going to have somebody in there at all times. I spent a lot of time talking to a lot of my colleagues throughout the state, and most of them that have skate parks do not have supervised. They have their rules established on signage, and when we're talking Burlington, Rutland, Colchester, Manchester, a lot of those facilities that they don't have a supervised person sitting.
I think someone from the public, did you have your hand up?
I'm sorry. I had my
hand up just on the...
If you could introduce yourself.
Jeff Clark, I'm with Basic. I just want to add one extra piece of information about the noise and maybe to help you clarify when the study should be done. I also looked at the Vermont Department of Transportation to get a sense of the volume of cars that go on Western Avenue, and they actually had 3 estimates over 3 years, 2006, 2008, and 2010. In 2006, the average cars quantity of traffic was 18,900, and then 2008 it was 18,300 per day, and then in 2010 is 13,100. I don't know why the drop is, but in any case, over a 24-hour period with that 13,100, it's essentially 1 car every 5.75 seconds, and that's over a 24-hour period, so it's probably more condensed during the day. So when I was doing my noise readings, it was actually difficult to get that ambient snapshot of, if nothing's happening, this is the noise level, because a car is either coming or going or something else. So just to get a sense of, you know, what you're looking for and what time of day, you're probably going to end up with a lot of mixed information if you don't, you know, narrow it down. So.
Sure. What's the size of the beginners area? One of the questions was related to the 2,000 square feet in beginners area, is it?
I would say more than that. This is, if you took away the bowl down this area, that's 10,000 square feet, so that looks more like 5,000.
So it's approximately 5,000 square feet in the beginners area, and that is separated by this rain garden between that and what we might call the intermediate or advanced area. The other question was talk about parking. Obviously, there's no on-site parking, the street parking. What do you have an estimate of the additional parking requirement that this might add?
It's not a formal estimate, but we would expect a peak user, the peak amount of users to be 25 to 30, which is not too far to walk. Coupled with the fact that there's a bus stop here, and the fact that we're centrally located where we presume that 15 cars would be a very rare instance. And speaking to Jeff's point, when you're talking about traffic, 15 to 13,000 is sort of a percentage of overall flow.
In the work that you do concerning sound, did you also provide the distance measurements from the major residences affected? There's at least 5 across Western Avenue and 2 or 3 on the Union Street. So, because we'll probably be talking a lot about how far and how much.
Yeah. It'd be nice maybe if we had some noise maker that, you know, simulated a skateboard. Maybe we, I don't know how you do that, but say we get 75, you know, we take our data that says peak levels are at 75 or 80 at the interior of the park. I don't know if we can duplicate that somehow and then go measure it.
It'd be nice for our site visit too, if we could do that during our site visit, replicate a typical noise. Right, and we'll go to the different property lines. Sure.
Somebody brought up the doing it in phases, and I don't know if any of that is a good idea or maybe it is. Somebody else brought up the idea of multiple sites. In your opinion, is that a good idea? I mean, combining the good people and the bad people, is that's better than?
I'll start with the phases. We talk a lot about it amongst ourselves in terms of where as our fundraising planning, and our goal is to stay away from phasing because we're concerned that if we built one phase, it might limit us in our fundraising ability. Our goal is to raise as much money as we can and build it right the first time. If you build part of it, we might lose some of the momentum on our fundraising side. In terms of other locations, it's really tricky, you know, like it's really hard to find a good place to skateboard. Every spot we've looked at has a drawback, and this one has impacts. We understand that. All those concerns we talked about are usually in other places become more of a problem. You know, in terms of surveillance at Union Station, it's a real problem. Or in terms of, you know, getting a lease at Union Station, it's just not going to happen. You know, there's other locations perhaps, but to get to another place in this town would be extremely difficult. And let me just add, sorry to interrupt, but I can't speak highly, or I can't speak loudly enough about how important it is to have that mixed use environment where there's activity. You know, it's the side effect is sound. I get it. I know it. I apologize up front about it, but an active location is a loud location. You know, it's kids screaming and basketball players wrestling and skaters skating. You know, it's really something that we view as a criteria for success.
I don't know if I'm right or not in this. Aren't you doing something tomorrow with that? They are having
we have an event tomorrow.
Yeah, with an event tomorrow with you're bringing in
That's right.
things.
That's right.
At the same spot.
And we have a sound meter as well.
Yes.
All day tomorrow, 2 to 6 or 2 to 6 p.m.
Yeah, not all day.
Not all day. 2 to 6 p.m. We're going to be skating on the basketball court.
Yes.
Let's go skateboarding day. It's a good opportunity to.
It really is.
And unfortunately, we have to warn our site visits as public meetings,
that's right.
and we won't be able to warn it for tomorrow. Although it would be a good time to capture some data, probably. Yes.
Can you talk about the school's position on locating it in another area of the same park?
They spoke specifically about maintaining the field, the open field, for their activities. One of the conditions of them approving this was that it be on the west end. And you know, I do want to address a consideration about the play structure and the ball field. My kids play on this playground, on the play structures. I know the concern, and I do. We have talked sort of superficially about moving the backstop over. And I've said this before, that there's not a lot of formal baseball that happens against this backstop. This is a kickball field mostly. There might be an opportunity to move this further away from the basketball court. That concern has been raised at other situations as well.
Is it conceivable that the skateboard area and the basketball court could be switched around? Put the basketball court where the beginners skateboarding area is, and how you already have that area is a pretty thick edge.
Right here?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know. It adds a pretty fair number of feet distance. It adds. There's more opportunity for better sound mitigation on the west side.
It's further from the residences, that's for sure.
And I don't know if it matters that much where the basketball court is. That's not without its noises also.
Or cost.
Or cost.
And surveillance. We would give, you know, as I said, this is really an exercise in sort of give and take, and the bit, you know, in our discussions, having visibility from the street has been pretty important, so, and the cost of relocating that and all the electric that goes along with it seems to.
If I may comment a little bit on the play structure, I know there's some concerns, and as recreation park structure, one of the last things that we want to do is put our play structure, in close proximity to the basketball court, where the basketballs are going to be a factor. There's a lot of ways of looking at this, and it really is going to be determined what the school district says, yes, we like that. The school area uses this ball field area not only for their gym classes, but it's also it's recess time. So it's that pick-up kickball game, it's that pick-up, a wiffle ball game. But there's a way of putting this backstop down here, and then we're able to pull those play structures and the swing sets away from the basketball court. So you're not, certainly we also have to keep in mind we have a fall zone and a protection zone from not only the swing sets but the play structure as well. So I don't want people thinking this is going to be adjacent to the basketball court, because that's not the case. And there's still this whole area, and how we redesign that will be up to the school department. And it's going to be something that works with the school, works with the town, and certainly all the users in that area. Because our number one concern is make sure that everybody's safe and everybody has a fun place.
Thank you. Yes.
I just wanted to say that.
First, I'm sorry. Could you use the microphone? Thank you.
I just wanted to say that I think it was Spoon's suggestion just now about putting the basketball court closer to the upper left area near the intersection of Western Avenue and Union Hill, basically where the current swings are. And then taking the skateboard park, keeping it at the lower left area, but then kind of bending it around to the right towards the current basketball court. To me, that's worth considering, as it's been pointed out, that current hedge between the basketball court and Western Ave is very significant, very thick, fairly high, about 4 or 5 feet high. And all of the skateboarding would then be significantly farther away from Brant's residence, the residences on Western Ave, I believe. So I hear the cost issues. I just wanted to say I hope you consider that.
Thank you. Yeah, and that'd be when we're out for the site visit, that'd be a good opportunity to look at the site and some of the topographical features.
Cost-wise, it might at that point make sense to build a barrier of some sort between.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
This is John Wilmerding. I'm sorry. This is going to come a little bit out of left field, and almost literally, because there is a left field out there to the right in that softball field. But if you're talking about us as neighbors being more aware and interacting with the park and having a modulating effect on what goes on in the park and so forth, what they call the neighborhood watch factor, for lack of a better word, I'd like to see a path go around the periphery of the park, because other than the play structures for the kids and the basketball court for the basketball players and the softball field, there's not anything that really invites people to walk through the park. And you notice there's a lot of green space to the left and along the bottom of there, but down an embankment. If there were a path that went around the periphery of the park, it would invite us as neighbors to walk through and see what's going on. And I could even imagine a day when I would walk through that park with friends and neighbors or visitors and say, look at this wonderful skate park that we have here.
Thank you. So we have to gather some more information last year to add those elements on your site plan that we discussed, noise study, and tentatively schedule, no, I won't tentatively, we might as well schedule it. When we schedule a site visit to the site at, what do you guys think, 5:30, 6 o'clock, July 3rd, 7th, 19th, July 19th?
It's Tuesday.
July 18th. What's
Well,
the
yeah.
preference of the board? 5:30, 6? 6 o'clock?
It's close.
It'll be light, it's
Yeah.
close. 6 o'clock? Okay.
The later the better for me.
Okay, 6 o'clock it is, July 18th site visit, followed by a public hearing here. And if you could circulate to the town planning services department the revised plan before then, that'd be great. Any additional comments from members of the public before that date? And of course, all of you are invited. Yes?
Francine Valerio. I just want to say one quick thing about a mixed park use. Everything that I've read about skate parks, and I have visited several, the skate parks that are built by themselves, and they're just off, and there's just one thing going on, the message that you're giving children is, we want to build you a skate park, but we want you over here, away from us. The great part that I keep finding out about the present location that we've been offered is that it's multi-use, and we're saying to the kids, you know, we want you to skate, but we want you with us here. There's some built-in supervision. So I just want to say that the more I've been finding out, that is really a great spot for you.
Thank you. So I'm looking for a motion to continue the hearing to July 18th at 6 p.m. at the site. Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That carries 7-0. Continue that.
Yeah,
we'll take a 5-minute break.
We'll call the June 20th Development Review Board meeting back to order, and application 2011-071 Delta Industries, a site plan concept review. Gordon, please tell us about it.
I'll begin because it's got my name on it, then I'll turn it over to Bob Johnson. We're basically here tonight and to ask for absolutely no vote from you on anything. It's just what we've tried to do over the years is come back from time to time and tell you what's going on at the campus. And typically a person comes in and wants something or needs a vote. We just wanted to tell you some of the things going on so that as we come forward in the next year, year and a half, 2 years with the entire campus with some new projects, that you'll sort of have a snapshot in time as to where we are, where we come from and where we are today.
Okay, great.
So now Bob Johnson, the founder and owner, will talk.
I'll just quickly outline some of what's happened in the last period since we were in here, and some of you some new information. The campus has grown in a significant and very positive way. I think I roughly calculate we brought about $40 million worth of investment to Brattleboro and the campus. The progress is on schedule to continue, and in fact, it looks like things are actually possibly heating up. Omega Optical added a new facility this last year, specifically for the mass production of 3D viewing glasses. The potential there is pretty large. We put together a single cell which is capable of producing something between 1 and 2 million pairs of glasses a year. We'll employ 24 people. We just received our last major piece of production equipment, and it's being commissioned in the next 2 weeks. The plan, we're in here think roughly a year ago to talk about was assuming this cell works positively, we might build 4 to 10 more cells in some of the lots adjoining the current Omega lot. So that's one major development. The part of our distributed power and heat plan is to develop a biomass digester. The digester is optimized for digesting whey, and with the whey will produce methane. The methane can be used then to produce electricity and or heat. The generation of waste product from that is actually heat that can be used for distributed power and heat. And that would be for both the Omega buildings and other potential developments. We have some interest in some agricultural development, which is also related to the whey digesting, and that would both be for greenhouse agricultural production, the byproduct of which would be mixed with the whey to again produce methane and heat. We're actively in discussion with the Inspire School for significant development of their facility. They're thinking about building a classroom building as well as some low-impact housing. Low-impact housing is something that we are hoping to put up the first unit of this year. We have a design for what will be, I think, the 18th truly passive solar house in the United States. And we're hoping to build that as a model in this year, and years to come reproduce that. So that's really going to be focused in the second phase of the campus development. Again, in the first phase of the development, we're in discussion with both UVM as well as some foreign universities with the possibility of a development, research and development facility that would sort of carry some of the things that we've been working on to a higher level. We are doing quite well with our photovoltaic development. We're about at the state-of-the-art for organic dielectric conversion, and we need to get to that level, and then we'll be developing a larger scale production. We're currently doing that work in the former parish house, and that would at some point move to the campus. So a lot's happening, a lot has happened. What we want to do is just to keep this group informed of what we're doing and make sure that there's support from the community and that we don't raise any issues. So, Gordon, do you want to
Like, the only thing I'd add is that, and all of it stays within the design that we have now, so the lot configurations and so forth, we're not looking for any changes or modifications. It's just to really bring you up to date as to where we are and where we might be going. There's some good things brewing.
Do you, just a few questions. So, it sounds like a fairly ambitious plan or an acceleration. I mean, it's been turning over and slowly getting there. Do I get the feel from this that you're ramping up on some level or another?
Well, some of these projects, could turn into something very, very significant.
Yep.
For example, the 3D lenses. There are something on the order of 200,000 theaters. Each theater would take between 500 and 1,000 pairs of glasses a year. So you're talking large numbers, if that, and our technology seems to have an upper hand on what's available. So we're sort of late player in the game, and we need to break into a market that's pretty well saturated at this point. So it's not a trivial task, but if it does take off, it could be very significant. Clearly the photovoltaics, again, there's a long way to go from where we are to where we would need to be to compete. But if we reach that point, we're talking about an entirely new approach to converting sunlight to electricity. So the potential there is very large as well. So things are going faster, but we've been moving at a pretty good rate. In the past, the Inspire School was built in just over 90 days. Our new production facility, went from permits to occupancy in less than 6 months. So we expect to continue at a fairly accelerated rate.
Bob, other than the potential for expanding Omega to whatever extent, have you got any nibbles on other industries or?
Gordon, I can talk a little bit about that. The nibbles is number one, and we're happy with our neighbor next door. Commonwealth has come on board, and they've started up. Number two, the Inspire School, which quietly started there with 3 students, for children on the autism spectrum. They're now up to 22 students and continuing to grow. So they've outgrown their current facility. So quiet little things like, and one of the things that the Inspire School wants to do is get into some entrepreneurship. So they want to also get into where they might, be making pizzas there or something. They've got a couple of ideas. And then, as we talked about, there's some agricultural uses that we're doing some tests on now.
But nothing I'm thinking along the lines of, a like the Commonwealth yogurt or a bigger place.
No, I think you're going to see. We're percolating. We're talking with them. Nothing on the drawing board at the moment to bring to you.
Okay.
But very close.
As a from this board's perspective, just a little bit of the technical side. We appreciate you coming before us and giving us a kind of broad, I hesitate to use the word touchy-feely, but kind of a broad update in terms of what's going on there. When we come to whatever it is the next development, we would appreciate, was discussed a little bit earlier, that we get like a fully engineered, proper set of plans and documentation that conforms to 1556, which is what we just brought up earlier. So I think the last application that went through, we not that we felt that it was rushed, it was just a question of there were a few little things that we would have been better off having up front for consideration. So when we go to the next one, we'd appreciate if you could, make sure that the elements of 1556 are kind of covered in your application.
No, and that's part of the reason we're here tonight, to sort of, okay, we're going forward, we're giving you, we're not just in asking for something in a hurried state. Let's talk, and yes, we understand how you want.
Yeah, I mean, the more
plans going forward, we want that for everything in the campus, yes.
I mean, we do understand that things stay in flux, but the more fully engineered it is, once you get to, like, we need a new building, or we need a new this.
Yes.
I mean, the uses and the PUD is pretty fully worked through, as you know, over the last however many years.
Yeah.
So, as each element or each successive development within that PUD comes forward, it's just the more detail we get up front, the easier it is for us to, go through the motions.
No, we hear you.
And the smoother it is
Yeah.
for everybody, so, so I don't know if there's any other questions from anybody else on the board, but certainly feel free to come back and, come back and, do the concept stuff with us, do preliminary site and go from there.
Yeah,
Yes.
I would like to ask a question. I just happen to be looking at the the site plan we have. Which page am I on?
Bottom right-hand corner.
Sheet 2.
Okay.
Oh, maybe they're all the same. I don't know. Maybe you could look at sheet 1. I'm just looking at that, the way these lots have developed. And there's kind of a general principle about very peculiar, unwieldy shaped lots. And I'm looking at that lot 25, which has this piece that comes all the way around down there. See, it's I guess as far as, a development, I don't know, what is that? Is that like a...
No, we can help you with that, and I'm also happy to, any one of you that want to come and meet offline, we'll talk about these. That's open land, so this just doesn't do justice to how the lots are. You have to read the crazy legend back there on page 1.
All right,
That basically, for example, what 25 is, there's a 50-foot buffer all the way around.
Yeah.
So that's why there's the little sliver. And that land is always open land 25, so that's never built on.
Yeah.
It doesn't come across well on a drawing.
All right, I just wondered about that. Thanks.
No, and we're happy to sit down with you to go over that.
Anybody else? Any questions for? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great. And good luck with whatever you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have one final matter before the board this evening. And we usually don't start matters after 10, but it is just barely after 10, and it's a fairly simple matter, and I'm sure we can get through this pretty quickly, with plenty of time for everyone to provide as much information as necessary to the board. So I'll call application 2011-072, request for site plan approval for modified building to expand business hours for a restaurant. Please tell us which project.
My name is Sally Silver. This is my partner, Adam Silver. We are here to have our CX Silver Gallery, which is located on Western Avenue. And we are planning to extend the open hours for the gallery, which is going to be size dim-sum tea house. It's providing the authentic Chinese home cooking and art and culture, and it's a unique dining experience with art in the gallery.
And how many days a week are you planning to operate the restaurant?
Yes, 3.
3 days. And
Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
And how many do you currently operate the restaurant?
Once a month.
Once a month. Okay. Okay. There were some concerns raised from the Planning Services Department about parking. Can you tell us a little about the parking for this site? I'm not sure. Do we have a site plan? I don't think
Yes,
we do. Do we have a site plan?
Yeah. There's currently parking for 7, plus on Western Avenue itself, the shoulders are quite generous.
And there's currently parking for 7. How many do you propose for the afterwards?
We wouldn't be increasing the occupancy or number served. It would remain at 22. And at the present, at any one time. So it would continue to be the same kind of flow, just more than once a month.
Okay. Do you have any parking difficulties with your dim sum events when they're once a month?
Well, I did ask our neighbors what what issues they mentioned that somebody occasionally had driven up to their place to turn around, and
I think we are going to plan to have a sign, a little sign saying parking up to here, not driving.
Also, when we do take reservations, so I make it clear where people can park, mostly on the avenue where there is easy access.
And that's where you encourage people to park, is right along Western Avenue.
Yeah.
If there's dedicated parking
Yeah, there's 3 spots out in front.
Okay.
And then, yeah. So anyway, then we were looking at having an accessible spot. In that case, we would explain being able to have a space, a wheelchair accessible space. That would be right where the mudroom is, and that would be very clearly explained. And there's room to do a K-turn back. Also, with the very heavy snows that we have, we would definitely like to invest in some extra front loading to widen the lane so that it doesn't become too constricted. When we had like how high we have, like 7 feet high, 7-8 feet high. It's like really heavy. You know, it could happen again. Probably will. So we also want to maintain the beautiful green backyard. So it would just be a matter of putting the snow into the front part of it, like I do presently with the snow blower, but maybe a little more effective. You know, just open it a little wider so we can actually put it in there, but not to make it like real messy or anything.
Any renovations to the building itself?
Well, we need to have some extra sinks, and we need a hood over the cooking equipment.
Any renovations to the exterior of the building?
Yeah, wheelchair accessible place, there will be.
A ramp?
No.
Well, actually, it's just
there is a drawing, there will be.
There's a drawing in here with it.
Yeah.
Let me show you. It's about.
So it's a ramp with the cover over it, was it?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Basically, the mudroom door would be widened a bit so that it would be able to have a wheelchair.
So
but the difference of level is about 17 inches. So it's basically just building. It doesn't even. You don't lose any parking there, but it's basically evening out the approach to the door.
Do you lose the garage by doing that? So this ramp here seems to be in front of
so the
garage number 1.
Right.
Yeah, the entrance, the wheelchair entrance will be just right at the red car over there.
Yep.
And then on the second floor window, and there will be a roof coming down a little gently.
To keep it in
keep the
in keeping
snow
with.
And guide the snow in a different way.
And also in keeping with the clapboard design of the building, like we did before when we opened the gallery. And also because the snow just dumps right there, so taking the opportunity.
Off of the.
Right, like this. just to make it
Safer.
What, so it's 3 days a week. What are the hours of operation? It goes from lunchtime through to 9 o'clock or something?
We've researched other restaurants and places, and we're a little something different. We're a tea house, so we actually would be open for dinner Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and brunch on Sunday. And possibly...
And dinner goes to what, 9, 9:30?
No
restaurant
later
hours?
than 9, like from 4 to 9. And because we only take 22 people at a time, we're only going to have 22 people at a time according to our occupancy. There's not a lot of people coming and going. And when we do catering, we're going to do bigger catering events. We do those on other days off-site at other facilities.
Could you just talk a little bit, the roadway that runs, or the driveway, or private drive that runs the side, you know, which we're looking at coming up towards us, that is...
It's a right-of-way.
It's a right-of-way to your neighbours' houses behind you?
To Becky and Brian and Freddie and Chris.
Is that paved, or is that...
It's paved.
Yeah.
It's also to the visiting nurse.
And the visiting nurse is at 820, what used to be Wosell Insurance, and is...
so he parks, you've got their parking at the back of what
They
used to be
have their
Wilson's.
parking over there.
Yeah.
And then there are 2 properties in the back of their own parking.
Okay.
And we have parking, which is not going to change. And the garage that's just currently used for storage anyway. The one garage where the proposed deck is to provide it even access.
Where does, if you have a restaurant, where's the restaurant waste going to go? Your trash containers and things like that?
We're doing Project Cow, which is...
Where's the cow going?
Well,
just joking. I'm sorry.
Well, first of all, we have...
It's after 10. That's a joke.
Yeah, the commercial composting where we have filtered caddies, and I take it to Wyndham Solid Waste and dump it whenever I'm going north, which is 2 or 3 times a week, and it cuts our garbage down by 80% already. And it takes all food products
Meat
and all paper products. So the only thing that doesn't go is plastic wrap and styrofoam, which I hate anyway. And our takeout containers are made of sugar cane and corn products, so they're also compostable, which is really amazing that they're making stuff like this, and not even at an exorbitant rate either. We've implemented those at the farmers markets also.
So there's...
We wouldn't need a container.
So, okay, that's the point.
Right.
So normally we would ask for the trash containers to be screened and that kind of thing. You're basically telling us you don't have containers.
We're already going to have filtered containers for that. I'm going to do my own transport for the compost. And then in terms of water, we've talked also to Ricky here and to Bob Stevens, and we're going to have a grease trap in the basement which links the sink and the walk range, the place where we cook, and it just comes right to in the basement, and it gets we just get it cleaned out. We have a clean out service, and it's.
So have you got you have to get a revised water and wastewater allocation from
Rick has already given me
estimates of that.
Told me that there's no need for a change in the sewer pipe, so we have an increased allocation of what goes from I think 900 to 1400.
What about will there be additional employees?
Part-time.
Part-time. Any restaurant tables on the outside? On the balcony, or on the, what do you call it, the porch?
No, not usually. Maybe once a year we have.
In the summer.
Not usually, because usually it's too windy.
And too noisy.
Yeah, mostly just inside. Any other thoughts or things?
Hi, any members of the board have additional questions or comments for the applicant? Members of the public, any additional questions or comments regarding this application? Please.
They're just disordered. First thing I want to
Oh,
say.
if you can use the microphone.
It doesn't work. It's a joke. It's like the emperor's new microphone. Watch.
And I've been trying to do this actually.
Testing.
It's not connected to the
It
loudspeakers.
hasn't been
but only
working.
to
I mean, I'm
this.
standing here.
Oh, it's connected to the camera.
It's only for the camera. It's connected to this. It's connected to the camera for some reason, but not the loudspeakers.
Okay.
So the people
That's
at
even
home
freakier.
just had you tap in their ears.
Sorry. Sorry, boys and girls. Anyway.
If you could introduce yourself, please.
I'm Freddie Hart. I
Thank
live
you.
near those guys and them. Anyway.
What was your name again, sorry?
Freddie Hart.
Freddie Hart. Okay, thank you.
Now I didn't want to speak into this. I was happy it wasn't working. Anyway, the first thing is they have great food. I just want that clear. And if we didn't live on the same driveway and have parking issues already, I would not stand here because I'd be happy to have a dim sum restaurant nearby. Our driveway is tight. It's small. In the winter, it has been plowed, the bottom end, very inadequately. I'm just trying to remember the things I took notes. Adam said they had 7 parking spots, but I think what isn't said is those guys have 2 cars. They have a couple of tenants, so there are always 3, sometimes 4 cars parked there already. So I'm not sure where these extra people are going to park because there are cars there often. And it isn't frequently, but we're coming in and someone's going out. Also from the visiting, I call it the visiting nurses building. It used to be Wosel's. It's not just a driveway that has 1 car, 1 car, 1 car. We have 2, they have 2, they have 2. It's often you're out on Western Avenue and some of us don't know the rights of way, so you're trying to turn into the driveway. Someone's coming down the driveway, and it's often a game of chicken. It's not a great driveway to have possibly more cars coming in. I didn't know it was going to be 3 days a week. I thought it was more. I would have loved to have been actually told about this by you. Never heard a word, heard from Brian. I would have liked to have had you come up and say, we're thinking of this. How do you feel about it? But you didn't. But you didn't. And if I just felt bad about it. I wanted to get that. I should have said something.
Ma'am.
Yes, sorry. We're not part of that.
It should be addressed.
Exactly. Sorry, you're right. Okay, so the parking is a problem now. I mean, the egress and entrance, and we go in and out a lot. We go in several times on a weekend. I'm just concerned that with employees are going to now be parking somewhere. Maybe they're on the street, but if they're on the street, the easy access to the driveway, I guess that's my big concern, and the plowing, which has been very inadequate. And when you have snow, you can't see over, even if it's not the 7 feet of last year, when the snow piles up and the cars are parked on Western Avenue, you can't see to get in and out. It's not ideal to increase the traffic on the driveway. That's it. I'm not against the restaurant. I'm against the driveways getting more complicated. I guess that's the bottom line.
There's been a recommendation from the Planning Services Department that one proposed solution would be to allow only your parking and your employees' parking in one handicap parking in the back, and tell all patrons for the restaurant to stay out on the street.
And we've tended to do that, actually.
Would you be opposed to that being a formal proposal to the problem?
Yeah,
so we're going to limit the number of folks in the back.
Sure.
We'll keep the same number of spots in the back, but employee parking in back, your parking in back, tenant parking in back, one handicap parking in back, but all restaurant patrons are out on the street.
Makes it a lot easier. Absolutely.
Okay.
Plus, as I said, we're going. One of the things we're budgeting in our game plan is to have our contractor come with his front loader and widen that thing, because that's always the issue. Because then it gets real hard, but we just widen it.
Widen
the when the snow gets embanked. We widen it so the people have enough.
better plowing at that
I have a plow guy who has a front loader. I'll give you his name. works out great.
Good.
Okay,
You get
so.
more than just my snow blower.
So, Craig.
Yes, yeah, no,
Sorry.
I'm Becky Cleveland. I live at 816, where the house, like right up at the end. Some of the concerns we had, like Adam mentioned, was the cars coming up and turning around in our driveway. I think having a sign there will be really good, and if the parking is not allowed in the back, that's going to help too. We do have a grandson who's out there, and we just worry that the cars are not going to see him. The snow removal, it's not necessarily our driveway, but the town doesn't really clean that section very well either. So the parking in front of the building is really hard because a snow blower is going to take forever if you've had a couple of ice snow storms. So I think maybe the town needs to step up to the snow plowing also to help clean that up, because then our driveway is more accessible also. And then the thing too is that we quite often, as Freddie mentioned, have cars that are coming out or coming in as we're coming in or out, and they think it's a 2-lane driveway and it's not. And that's caused some problems before. And I don't know if they're coming from your place or the apartment building up next to you. I don't know exactly where they're coming from. But it's been a couple times I've been like halfway out on the avenue when a car just shows up and I have to stop on the avenue. I can't get any further because they think they've got the right of way and I've got cars coming at me. So there's a little bit of a danger there too that hopefully will be eliminated by the, excuse me, I have a cold, eliminated by parking on the main street. The one question I did have also is on one of your diagrams here, the trash container, is that actually inside garage 3?
Oh, no, we changed that because
Okay.
now that we're doing commercial composting, we're not having a trash container anymore, a dumpster. We talked to Triple T and we can use regular trash cans. And they pick up every week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
'cause
plus I'm transporting like twice or 3 times a week. Whenever I'm going to the bank, I'm also taking garbage. So
I mean, I think that's pretty much my husband
I
Brian's
love this new
concerns.
garbage thing because it was like
Something either way.
Great, thank you very much. Any other members of the public have questions or comments regarding this application? So I think what the board would like, again, at the suggestion of the Planning Services Department is, and I'll make this a part of the motion, a restriction on the use of the parking to the side of the building for employees, for your parking, and for tenants, with the exception of a single handicap parking space,
Right.
which would be allowed for restaurant use, and a sign indicating such, and you can work with the zoning administrator to figure out an appropriate sign for that location that says, restaurant use, no parking for restaurant use, or something along those lines, and then approval as drafted. Do I have a motion to that effect? So moved and seconded. Second. There we go. Second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say nay. I abstain. So that carries. What is it? 4-5-0-1. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.